I don't think we have a quorum.
Long time no see.
Welcome, everyone, to the September 5th, 2024 meeting of the Expanded Budget Committee of Tompkins County Legislature. I had some preliminary thoughts about our EBC process, and I sent everyone a copy of it, but I thought I'd read it into the record as a prelude this evening. Although our 2025 budget process has been going on since before April, we are about to embark once again on our vital role as members of the Expanded Budget Committee, EBC for short. The EBC process was instituted by the county legislature in the late 1990s, and its format has evolved annually since then. The old way of doing things, and the way it is still being done in most municipalities, was for the small budget committee to bring forth to public hearing the administrator's budget, a few changes, and then for the full legislature to adopt it. The problem was that the majority of legislators did not have any real exposure to the needs and requests of the departments and agencies, but were obliged to vote without more complete information. The solution was hit upon to expand the small budget committee during budget review into a committee of the whole. That way, all legislators would be better informed and would be a part of crafting the final budget before its actual adoption. An additional tweak was to add a budget forum earlier in the process to give constituents the opportunity to speak about the plan before legislators began voting. In early years, it was not unusual for several legislators at a time to be absent from the EBC meetings. That led to the rule that action could be taken by a majority of those present. The EBC only proposes amendments to the administrator's budget, and that can be changed later by the full legislature. That is why a motion made in EBC can only be amended one time, since what is already on the floor is an amendment to the amendment. That has never been much of an impediment because another motion, changing a dollar amount, for example, can always be made, altering slightly one that was previously approved or rejected. Attendance by legislators at EBC meetings has never been mandatory. At the beginning, there were frequent absences, but over the last few years, attendance has been exemplary, with most legislators attending most sessions. That shows a real commitment to the budget process. The first few EBC meetings are given over to presentations by administration, county departments, and agencies. Because there are so many of them, presentations are fairly limited. Nevertheless, legislators are given exposure to departments and agencies that may not report to committees on which they serve during the year, and can hear some of the basics. Responses to presentations by legislators are limited to asking clarifying questions and not making speeches or engaging in debates about particular topics. That happens during the voting sessions. The 2025 budget will not be an easy one. They never are. There is always a lot more will than there is wallet. It will be full of available data, best estimates, best guesses, and a few hunches. It rests on a summer's worth of hard work by our county administrator while working with our director of finance and their staffs. The whole EBC process could not go forward without them. The work of our legislature clerk and her staff in scheduling meetings, attending our meetings, and keeping records is vital. We rely on our public information director to keep the public apprised and to make our process a true example of transparency. To all of our department heads, agencies, and county employees, we extend our thanks from the very beginning of our process right through until the final budget is adopted. When we look back, we can all be proud of what we will have accomplished together. Thank you. The first thing up tonight is the capital plan, and so I'm going to turn it over to our administrator, to talk about our capital projects.
Thank you, Mike. I have a presentation that I am going to share. Right.
This
Great.
is section 3, of course, of your budget book, or if you have it online, it would be section 3.
Thank you. And I just a couple of minutes ago emailed everyone a copy of this PowerPoint presentation as well to refer to. So I'm going to go over a broad overview of what's included in the 2025 capital budget, how the projects are funded, and highlight certain projects that weren't able to be included or not fully funded. And this year, those projects were included as over-target requests to draw your attention to them. First slide here is an overview of past projects that have long since been completed and for which we're now paying debt service. There's no decision to be made here, just a point of information. We're currently covering $5.9 million in debt service payments under the tax levy in 2025. The airport and recycling materials management have past and current capital projects, and as enterprise units are expected to budget and pay for those projects and any associated debt service under their own budgets. Though we know in 2025 we're paying the third year of a one-time payment for half of the debt service on the airport's 2019 terminal expansion project. That's slated to be hopefully the last one, but other than that, these are covered by the enterprise units. Next are existing or new projects that are included in the 2025 capital program, or part of the capital program. We've reviewed the project approval request, the PAR forms, and discussed these projects in the various program committees throughout the summer, so you're probably very familiar with them, and I'm not going to go into them in great detail, but listed here are the projects for under facilities and under recycling and materials management. And as noted here, the green facilities phase 2 funding isn't included in 2025, and we'll talk about that further on in the presentation. Here are the projects under planning and sustainability, ITS, Department of Emergency Response, and DSS. The natural infrastructure project has funding in its account to keep the projects going in 2025, so further funding has not been added in the 2025 capital plan. Broadband isn't included in 2025, it's instead included in 2024. We'll talk about that one too. And emergency shelter is, we know that we need to fund and a decision needs to be made from where. So we're going to highlight and talk about that one too. Also, under the airport in 2025, there are a number of projects, each of which are covered with 95% federal funds, 2.5% New York State funds, and the remaining 2.5% eligible to be covered through passenger facility charges, or PFCs. And I want to highlight this because it's a very good thing in 2025, because typically the breakdown is 90% federal, 5% state, and 5% local PFC funded. So basically in 2025, we're able to get these projects done with half the local cost for the PFCs, which is a very good thing. This is what our 5-year trajectory looks like with our current and future debt service according to what we have in our capital plan. So again, in 2025, we're slated to pay $5.9 million. In 2026, that goes up to $6.2 million, and that's about there or less through 2030. I also wanted to draw your attention to 4 capital projects that are ongoing in nature and that for many years we'd supported with fund balance, as well as in recent years ARPA. These include facilities restoration, which overall cannot be bonded unless it involves a major project. Green Fleet, which is now this county's centralized fleet management program and which cannot be bonded. Highway road maintenance and highway machinery, both of which can be bonded. The next slide shows some additional capital costs under the tax levy under a few different scenarios, because let me go back. These projects here that I called out in the previous slide, being that we are fund balance challenged in 2025, this is where we were trying to use a combination of funding sources to fit these into the 2025 capital project, the capital program budget, and have a plan to fund them in the future. So looking here, this shows the additional capital costs for those projects under two different scenarios. The blue bars indicate the amount of increase to the tax levy if we incorporated these 4 projects in by paying for them outright in cash. So, and in 2025, we're proposing that we pay for these 4 projects with a combination of one-time funds from reserves, bonding the portion that's eligible for bonding the highway projects, and adding $1.2 million to the tax levy. In 2026, it would entail another $1.2 million increase to the tax levy to gradually incorporate those along with bonding the highway projects and stretching them out for a longer time horizon. In comparison, paying for them outright under the levy would entail another $2 million increase, and so on under these scenarios. So. This graph also assumes that the Center of Government project will proceed using the $9 million set aside in reserves, but it will reach, that total allocation will be spent by 2030, and the debt service payments would begin in 2031. And the public safety building costs would begin to hit the capital plan in 2029.
Are those dates in the book somewhere, or?
Yeah, they're listed within the capital projects themselves. Okay. So the next, just wanting to spend a little bit of time on what we're calling the capital over target request to highlight the particular projects so you're aware of certain details and decisions about how we're proposing to fund them. The facilities restoration project was one of the 4 that I'd mentioned in the previous slide. This year, the request was for $1.4 million, and that has been the request ongoing for some time. And in the budget, I recommend decreasing this by $500,000 this year, therefore only funding up to $900,000. Of this, $200,000 would be incorporated under target funding, and $700,000 would be one-time funds, again, using that $3 million freed up with the debt service reserve this year. The impact by doing this is that lower priority projects would be deferred for another year. There is, of course, a risk to doing that too many times because, one, we fall behind in our facilities restoration. The Green Facilities Phase 2 project, the overall capital project request was for $7.5 million. Unfortunately, no funding was able to be recommended for 2025. Instead, we've had to look at the projects within the work plan on somewhat of a case-by-case basis to determine priorities. And the boiler replacement at the Human Services Building needs to take place in 2025. It is a priority. However, that cost is likely to be fully funded through a combination of NYSEG rebates and Inflation Reduction Act funding. The solar canopy at Whole Health is likely to be funded through the Green Energy Communities Grant, so those projects could move forward in 2025, while the others would need to be referred.
Can I ask, when you say they're likely to be funded, we wouldn't move forward with them unless we knew we had the funding?
Certainly, we would not for the solar canopy. With the boiler replacement at the HSB, we're going to need to find a way to move forward with that. And there hopefully will be time when I'm done. Arel and Terry are both here, can speak more to that in particular.
Thank you.
Sure. The public safety building construction project, last year, the legislature had indicated that you wanted to see the schematic design costs for this project added into the 2025 budget, and $1 million is now included using the capital reserve account where funds were set aside for this purpose. Wanted just to draw your attention to that. All of this, of course, is subject to your change and amendment if we see the need. The emergency shelter, this is a project where a decision is required. This project is new to our capital plan. It was not included last year. And according to the work of our previous consultant, this project is estimated to cost $8.2 million, with of that $6.2 million eligible through New York State HHAP funds and $2 million cost to the county. There are likely to be costs associated with this project in 2025, and we have to decide whether to bond for them or take the funds out of the capital reserve. This question arises because the capital reserve funds were earmarked originally for the Center of Government project and the public safety building project. We did not factor in an emergency shelter at that time, and we already did take some funds out of the capital reserve in anticipation of the purchase of the land for an emergency shelter. So this is an area of question, and also it is an assumption that we will only have $2 million in local costs versus the $8.2 million with the HHAP funds. So this is an area of assumption and a little bit of risk, and where a decision needs to be made. Next is emergency services radio equipment. Here's a bright spot after a dark one. So this is through the Department of Emergency Response. Bringing this to your attention only because we are now expecting grant funding to come forward to help us with this project. So we are not budgeting funds for it, and we won't move forward with it until we get the grant funds. Broadband, this is for the project management costs for the broadband expansion, where the expected local share was at one point when we started with the PAR forms estimated at $409,000. My understanding that cost may have decreased since then. When we put the capital program together back in June, we understood that we might be hearing back about the New York State Connect All grant in the summer, and that we would at that time need to move ahead with grant acceptance and proceed with the funding. So therefore, the plan was to proceed assuming that we would be notified of the grant in 2024, and we would use contingency funds and not include it in the 2025 capital plan. It's now September, and we've yet to hear about the grant. My understanding from Katie, we may hear about it in October. We hope so. Early on in the capital process, we considered increasing the annual contribution to the capital reserve, recognizing the number of projects in our capital plan. This is not included to keep us within the tax cap, or you could say we're now funding some of these projects directly, but we have not increased the capital reserve in 2025. The Falls Road Bridge project over to Gannick was approved for Bridge New York funding, and there's a local share of $47,000, which we're paying through the D Fund, which is a highway capital reserve. The highway maintenance, the road maintenance program, $2.4 million was requested, and here we're recommending that it be funded through a combination of $1 million in one-time funding, and that is a combination of highway reserve accounts, $532,000 from the highway defund reserve account, which takes us to our minimum required fund balance in the defund, and $468,000 using another reserve, the HQ fund. $280,000 in target funding under the levy, and the remainder bonded, $1.2 million bonded, $1.2 million bond. The next is highway machinery, and $1.7 million was requested in 2025. Of that, we were just able to allot about $336,000 in ARPA funds prior to the end of the year toward 2 pieces of equipment. That leaves $1.38 million unfunded in 2025. In consultation with Jeff Smith on this and understanding that cuts were going to be made, he preferred to take those cuts in highway machinery rather than under road maintenance. But I also want to note that we've reduced the machinery targets over the last 2 years. And like fleet maintenance, falling behind in machinery replacement risks the depreciation of the existing stock, which then affects trade-in values, which are used to offset the purchase of new equipment. Next is the Midline Road Culvert Project, another Bridge New York project, which we were approved for. There are $59,000 in local expense, which we will fund using the highway defund. And then the last project that we're calling out for attention is the Green Fleet Project, which is, it's not just greening our fleet, it's the primary funding mechanism for all of the great extent of the county's vehicles. So $987,000 was requested, and $300,000 is recommended. $200,000 in one-time funds and $100,000 under the target. And given this great reduction, the impacts will be to focus on areas of most critical need throughout the organization, and that tends to be the sheriff's office vehicles, which rack up the most mileage. This is a chart summarizing the projects that we just mentioned and the funding streams we're using to support them. I'll note that the airport is included at the bottom of this chart as a note that we are supporting the bond payment, or half of their bond payment for what's hoped to be the final year. The Capital Reserve Fund noted is the Capital Reserve Fund that was set up last year and funded with $11 million for the Center of Government and Public Safety building. The one-time funds column refers to the $3 million in one-time funds made available this year by using money in the debt service reserve to pay off debt service. The HQ fund refers to the account where for many years, the 0.5% that we've collected on the annual levy for reserve payments for capital, that's where that's been going, and that's the HQ fund. And then the highway has the defund. The tax levy, self-explanatory. We're, again, saying we'd bond $1.2 million for road maintenance, and then you have the totals. And then these are the capital over-target requests that were not funded. The green facilities, $7.5 million project would result in $463,000 in debt service. The emergency shelter, if we chose to do it through debt service, would be another $150,000 on the levy. We didn't fund the highway machinery at $1.3 million. The broadband, again, according to the PAR form, would be a one-time cost of $409,000. We are hoping it would be much less than that for the project management and we are not increasing the capital reserve. And then some final considerations. Again, just to note, the HQ fund for capital, there is the annual contribution of a 0.5% on the levy that's built into the county administrator's recommended budget for 2025, as it has been in the past. There's currently 1.48 million in the HQ fund that has been unassigned, so to speak. We are assuming anything that we bond for will have interest rates of 4.5%. That may change, hopefully for the better. And also the assumption or the risk that 2025 would be the last year to support the airport's debt service. So those are all of the points I wanted to go over. And again, we have staff both available via Zoom or in the room here if there are questions about any of the particular capital projects.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. Let's go to questions. Hands, please. Randy.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa, for making that understandable.
Microphone.
Thank you for making that understandable. What is the total amount bonded now for the county? Know that?
You mean the total amount over time that we will have to pay off, not the,
No,
not just
like
next
what's the
next year.
total amount we're going to pay total for bonding this year? I mean, 2025, I mean, I see your sheet here, but I don't know if I missed that.
Yeah, I think it was, is it 8.9 million? It's one of the first ones. Oh, the debt service, 5.9 million.
So that's that's our bond payment for 2025.
That's correct.
But the total dollar amount bonded, and I know maybe you did last year, you showed how it was going to change over time, but
Yeah,
maybe that's a second question, you can get back to me.
sure.
on that later.
We can get back to you on that. I don't have it at my fingertips.
And you taught, so we answered a lot of questions. The highway road maintenance, do we always bond that?
We have in the past, and Jeff, feel free to jump in. We have in the past, but over the last several years, we had covered it with fund balance, and 1 year we did cover it with ARPA funds.
Jeff, since you're there, so aren't we providing $2.4 million every year for the road maintenance?
Jeff, please come up to a microphone.
Good job, Lisa. Thank you. The ARPA was only funded 1 year, the funds, and they.
So this isn't the paving that you do every year? I know you get so much money for paving. This is.
Yeah, we do most of our road plan with this funding, and we'll also get into some culvert work, concrete culverts, things like that, medium to small size box culverts, lining, a lot of different road projects, yes.
Thank you. And then you mentioned about the HG fund, the D fund. How is that established? How is that? You had, I think, HG fund, which you had detail on there, but the D fund, how is that funded, I guess, the D fund?
It's a fund balance from highway projects, I think. So it is the kind of any overage from previous highway projects can be put there for future use toward highway projects, is my understanding.
It's so that, we contribute, the A fund contributes to the D fund every year to support the highway department. Those are really those are unspent funds from the highway department, whether that was due to vacancies or due to cost savings that they incurred, that because it's in the D fund, it never transfers out of that fund. It stays there, and that's how that begins to accumulate. Now, I don't know, this has been done over several years, so it's not that this is their fund balance on a regular basis.
Do we know how much money's in that one? And you mentioned that we've reached the minimums, I think you stated.
Yes. There's about 1.76 million, And what we are proposing would take us down to about 1.1 million, which is the target, minimum target for that fund.
Okay, thank you.
Donna?
Thank you. I'm looking at the PowerPoint here, and I continue to have concerns about our airport and the fact that we only have a few flights coming in and out of it every day. And I know that it's noted for existing or new projects, and it lists, I don't know, maybe 10 new projects or existing projects that are in the works. My question is it guaranteed that we will not be using taxpayer money to continue these projects?
I can say, and I don't have the figure in front of me, that these projects amount to, we took that part
For the
out.
PFC?
The PFC.
PFC's around 160, not exactly, because I don't have it in front of me either. It's right around $168,000 for the PFCs.
Okay.
But that's the drawdown for that once we have those funds available.
Okay. I mean, I think there's confusion because we just did this massive renovation many years ago, and we were told that all of our PFCs would go to pay for the debt service for that renovation. And I can't imagine with us having a decrease in people flying in and out of our airport that we're actually able to pay for debt service
We're not.
and pay for all of these renovations. Right. So we're
We're
operating.
paying debt service.
No, that's right. So essentially, we're operating at the cost of negative $250,000 for the airport. Is that accurate?
That's negative 250,000 for the customs. I think it's the figure that we have is more like 600,000 that we're paying for the airport this year.
642.
642. The opportunity that we have with the SCASD grant to increase air service and increase the daily flights out of the airport is what we are hoping will generate more enplanements and generate more PFCs to address that gap in 2025. And that's, I think we're as close as we have been to those conversations with airlines to increase those services and flights.
I guess my big concern is at what point do we stop pouring so much money into the airport
Well,
and we actually start seeing a return? I mean, this is a lot of money that we're spending, Mike, and I think it's important to.
yes, but you can have all the debates you want later when we get into the voting situations. You make proposals, but this evening, because of the short time we have for each of the items, we're trying to ask clarifying questions.
Clarifying.
Greg?
If I could clarify, I think we are down from pre-pandemic numbers. We are up from 2023 or 2022 flights. So just to make sure that we're telling the right story, we are down from pre-pandemic numbers, but we have continued to show year-over-year growth in flights and seats being occupied, with more flights being added as time goes on.
Other questions? I had a question. Lisa, you mentioned in the facilities the reduction about 500,000 and said it would mean we would have to defer longer some of the smaller projects. What are some examples that we will have to defer?
Aurel can speak to those. He has said that he would need to prioritize the necessities, life, health, safety types of repairs and maintenance, but the types of things that would need to be referred or deferred in 2025, Aurel?
Yeah, so in the slide that you had, it would be kind of the last couple of items that were there. I think we had flooring replacements, some envelope improvements. And so envelope improvements include not only the actual facade Like at the library, we'd like to restore the IFAS or the drive-it that's on there and do some work on the brick. It also includes windows, so there are a few buildings that we haven't replaced windows in many, many years. And those are big-ticket items, but they're not essential. They're more on the aesthetic side, but they also affect energy. Flooring replacements, which is carpeting. We have a few buildings that are well past, kind of the life cycle that we would want. The higher priorities would be the elevator modernization, which is this building, and the whole health on 55 Brown Road. We've done all the other elevators about 3 years ago, and those are the two that are left, and so those are code-related that we would like to do. Roof replacements, because those affect the building deterioration. So we can defer it, but it'll just come back the following year, which means that whatever we had planned for 2026, we're going to have to push off as well.
Thank you, that helps. Anyone else? Yes, Veronica.
Two maybe broadish questions. One, can you remind us if we were to want to in the future, not now, propose changing any of the capital plan stuff, would we submit I guess just an amendment that would say in plain language,
Yes.
what to do? Okay. Right, that makes sense, even though it doesn't matter that you're calling these over target requests, but it sounded like that was in quotation marks. But I guess amendments work the same either way. The other question is, when hearing about like what Arel just said and deferring things, I guess in my mind, it makes sense to defer work that is going to eventually need to be done anyway, either if you literally don't have the money to pay for it, like I'm thinking in my own life, or if you expect that, well, we're having budget troubles now, things are going to be better in 2020, like 6, 7, 8, 9. And I know economists don't have a crystal ball, but do we expect budget things to be better in 26, 7, 8, 9? Because that would help if anyone has an idea. I don't know, Deborah, you follow all the news. That would help me think about things.
Don't ask Deborah.
Oh, well, okay. That's my question. Mike's in charge.
Anyone but Deborah.
Wants to respond to that, that's all right.
Will.
Randy?
I have a question on bonding. I think the last time that we bonded out, I think it seems to me it was last year, and it seems to me the interest rate was 3.5% then. Maybe my memory may be wrong. And then you're saying 4.5% for anything we bond, you think now. What's changed, or maybe I'm off?
It's just so that everyone here is aware of what percentage we factored in to the numbers we've included in the budget. So if we look into it more carefully and that number is lower, then we'll be better off. So
the reason I'm asking that question, because I'm wondering if we shouldn't be bonding more. So maybe not, but I'd like to understand why I'm asking the question of what is our total bonding now? And do we have like a spreadsheet that says that this is bond X for this much percentage? And I think you showed that last year, maybe.
Yep.
And I probably lost it, so I apologize. But it would be nice to see that whole picture again.
Yep.
For all those various items, to see when they end, and so we can look at that. And maybe it makes sense to bond more things.
Sure. Yeah. Any information we can provide to help with the decision making, is glad to do it.
Ann Corman.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation, Lisa. So one question, let me just see, I think I have it narrowed down to one, but I'll think about it when the answer's done. I'll check my notes. So one question I have is if we could have a breakdown, obviously not right now, of what the projects are within the green facilities part 2 and the restoration, the building restorations, so that we can see the ticket prices within those sections.
Sure.
That aren't being recommended, of course.
Yep, sure.
And, oh, my other question was, could we also get a number, a projected number for the emergency shelter 8.2, and I know we don't know the exact number, but that's the estimate right now, but for the 8.2 million, can we get an estimate on what that would add to our tax levy every year and for how many years?
Meaning if we were to bond the full 8.2, if the state funds didn't come through?
Right,
Yep, sure.
thank you.
Greg Benzie.
That's all I
I'm
had.
sorry, Shawna Black was next, then
Sorry,
Greg.
Shawna, sorry, Shawna.
I just had a question in regards to process for us submitting questions. Typically, in the past, what we've done as legislators is if we're writing a question, is there someone that we should write to in administration, and can the answer be followed up with all our colleagues?
Everyone, yes, we'll
Okay.
do that same process this year, and we didn't really, I mean, you can email any one of us, Corey or Norma or myself, and for all of us, any one of us, we'll get the answers and get the information out to the full group.
Okay.
Greg.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize for being late, and I know I missed the emergency shelter piece, and it says it's not recommended. The text that you have in your slide is what would have been done if it would have been funded?
So this was because the emergency shelter is new to the capital plan in 2025. It wasn't there last year. And the question to be answered is, do we want, and we know that we have to do it, do we want any of those associated project costs to be funded from the capital reserves that were set up specifically for center of government and public safety building? They weren't, the emergency shelter didn't exist then. Or should we bond for it and keep those reserves aside for those two other projects?
And all we would really be bonding for in 2025 is the preliminary development cost, design, documents, engineering, et cetera?
And possibly, a ban if they can start construction, because we want to try to move it along. The question is also, will we receive that state funding? That's another question.
Land acquisition also?
And land acquisition, thank you.
Thank you.
Deborah.
So right now, we're only talking about $1 million. That's in 2025, and that's for the initial planning, right?
That's correct.
That's the public safety building, I'm sorry, I'm
Public safety
confused.
building is $1 million for the schematic design.
Okay, so you're talking now about bonding potentially $8.2 million?
No. I didn't, don't put those words in my mouth.
No. Well, that was what your question was.
No, my question was, how much are we actually going to spend in 2025? Because that's the portion of the capital that we would need to cover in 2025. The full 8.2 is going to be the majority of that will likely be paid in 2026
Okay.
fiscal year.
So I guess one of the things that we need to consider when we decide if we're going to take any of that money out of what is reserved for the center of government for a project in the next year or two, I guess we're making a bet on what we think interest rates are going to be on bonding in out years, because we're probably not going to be getting around to incurring any cost on the center of government for a year, 18 months at least. 2 years, okay. So I guess one of the things I just want to suggest we consider is where we think interest rates are going on the bonding. Because I think that, more than anything else, should be the factor that determines what we spend now and what we save for later. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just trying to get to the true 2025 cost.
Yes.
Rich, you just joined us. We're still talking capital.
Thanks, and I apologize. I had another commitment, so I'm sorry to be late.
Other questions? Mike or Rich, you came in later. Anything on capital? Okay, let's move on to our next up is Ithaca Area Economic Development. Heather McDaniel is here. This is in section 5 of your book at page 52. Welcome.
Sponsored agency.
When you're ready, Heather.
I'm just waiting to be promoted. Here we go.
Aren't we all?
Well,
Feeling very important now. Well, thank you for taking the time this evening to hear a little bit about IAED, your countywide economic development agency. So just as a reminder, our mission, we're dedicated to building a thriving and sustainable economy that improves the quality of life in Tompkins County by fostering the growth of business and employment. And our new vision statement this year is a diverse and inclusive economy with innovative businesses, entrepreneurs, and partnerships that foster employment pathways, promote economic prosperity for all. At IAED, we do a lot with scarce resources. We focus mostly on tradable sector industries, those that sell products or services outside the county, often nationally and internationally. They bring wealth into our community. They create long-term quality job opportunities. Our core activities at IAED, the sort of our 3 pillars, the things that we do best. We provide customized direct services to businesses, whether it be a product that we have in-house, working with incentives through the Industrial Development Agency, our loan fund, our quasi-equity fund, or referring businesses out for other kinds of state and federal funding. Our second pillar, we added a couple of years ago, workforce development. We just graduated our second cohort of direct to work, our Pathways to Manufacturing training program. We had our first ever graduation ceremony last Friday. It was really a lovely time to see 8 new graduates preparing for interviews at their employers of choice within the region. We've already started our recruitment for the fall cohort of direct to work, so that'll be our 3rd cohort this year. We have been utilizing our 3-year federal work grant as well as a $75,000 over target request from last year to expand the direct to work program and then move into building it out in the construction trades area. So on direct to work, we have just recently been made a TC3 pre-apprenticeship program. With that comes $1,000 stipends for all of our students, 15 credit hours at TC3 should they decide to matriculate at any time in the future. We've built out a new metrology component. Please don't ask me what that is. It has something to do with measurement. I've seen the equipment. In the fall, we will be hosting part of the cohort at TC3 in their soldering lab. We're adding soldering at the request of some of our manufacturers. On the building trades side, we have completed profiles for, I think we have 6 or 7 partner trades. We've identified union employees that will be doing the training. We're hoping to launch that program in January. We are starting to build out all of the training modules on the pathways to pre-apprenticeship for the construction trades. And then our third pillar, economic development leadership. This is a big planning year. We've been participating with a Southern Tier regional clean tech study with all of our counterpart economic development organizations, really to identify our opportunities to leverage some of the cutting edge research and investment that's going on in Binghamton around clean tech and battery technology. We are also participating with the Micron Consortium and looking at both workforce and business attraction and growth opportunities there. We are undertaking a countywide economic development strategy this year. Some of you in this room have been in some focus groups. I'm hoping we'll see you in more focus groups when our consultant is in town later this month. And I'm participating as the co-chair on the Groton New York Forward $4.5 million award from New York State. We've been meeting a lot to identify projects, solidify our vision, and put together a real plan for revitalization on downtown village of Groton. Our reach with all of our businesses that we work with is far and wide, considering we're a little upstate community in New York. So thought you might like to see that visual. Just a reminder, IAED is really funded in three parts. The Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency, county government, thank you very much for your support, your continued support. And the remaining comes from investors, companies and businesses that really believe in our mission. So we go out and raise funds on a 5-year cycle from investors. We just completed last year a almost $1.9 million investment round from private industry. Right before that, we had led off with a 5-year MOU with the county to support a portion of our budget. And we are in the second year of that 5-year county MOU. So our requested through that contract is $315,570. It's about 27% of IAED's total budget. And just a reminder, our outcomes over our last 5-year investment cycle from 2019 to 2023, we're here to grow our economy and really support good paying jobs. We managed projects that invested over $850 million in private capital in our community, created and or retained over 1,500 jobs. That translated to $41 million in new payroll for those new jobs and over 1,700 housing units. About 25% of those are affordable units. And this is a picture of our most recent direct-to-work cohort and all of their partners. And once again, I want to thank you for your support. It does contribute to a thriving and sustainable economy. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you.
Let's open it up to questions. Greg Mezzi.
Yeah, just to clarify, the 315,570, that's a number that's in the contract, correct?
It is,
Right.
yes.
All right, just wanted to be clear where that came from.
Anyone else? I can't see Ann. Ann, if you've got your hand up, just holler out, please.
I don't have my hand out, but I had a small question that since you called me out, Mike, was, Heather, thanks for the presentation. Just wondering if you could clarify on the slide about IAED's reach. What exactly does that mean?
Those are companies that we've worked with over the past 5 years that either have supply chain or headquarters or satellite offices or some sort of relationship, a physical facility in another state. For example, someone like Dimensional Energy, which was a startup that spun out of Cornell, they have their headquarter offices here, their financial staff here. They have an R&D facility in Tucson, Arizona. They have another R&D facility in Houston, and they have they are starting a new demonstration facility up in British Columbia. So they make sustainable aviation fuels literally out of thin air.
Thank you.
I want to buy in on that one.
United bought in to the tune of $10 million.
Randy next, then Amanda.
Yes, thank you, Heather. How do you collaborate with other entities that are doing workforce development? Like we have our own workforce development people. BOCES, I've heard ads on the news about what they're doing for people for employment and training for, I think it's probably for carpenters and things like that. I know Cornell Crop Extension is doing some things, so and there's probably more people who are doing workforce things. How do you collaborate and get the most out of all those people?
Sure. So our manufacturing partnership I'll speak to, but the same will happen with the trades. It is, first of all, industry driven. So we very much meet with the employers, understand their needs, do deep dives and understand what the job profiles look like, what kind of skill sets they need, who's going to be successful on their manufacturing floor. And that helps to inform designing a training program. We're conveners and collaborators at IAED. We don't deliver direct training. We manage the program, and the training is provided by some of those training providers, TC3 being one of them, very much in collaboration with BOCES on the non-union side of the construction trades program. And then the secret sauce really for any industry partnership program is all those social service agencies and workforce development agencies. And as an economic development agency, we've always had ties with workforce, but not so much the social service agencies. So what we've done is we've built sort of a collaborative partnership. Chris Spahn at Workforce Development Board has been instrumental in putting together some quarterly meetings of all those social service agencies, because they're the key to really finding un- and underemployed individuals, understanding if they're a good fit, providing wraparound services or support services to get them to a position where they're a good fit so they can go into our programs and then go directly into work. So it's sort of a continuum, and everyone's trying to support one another and work together. So we have regular meetings with workforce. Part of, our continued relationship with TC3, they called us up and said, hey, let's make you a pre-apprenticeship program. And so, we're building and strengthening that partnership there, just as an example.
And you mentioned a focus group. What is that doing?
Oh, focus groups for our countywide economic development strategy. So we hired a consultant, Camoin Associates, out of Saratoga Springs. They do economic development planning and other consulting services really throughout the country. And so what they're doing to get an entire sense of the community, they came in July, and they met early on with some small groups. I know they met with Dan Klein and Rich John, the chair of the IDA, and Greg Mezzi, chair of the committee I report to, just to get a sense of what's important for you in terms of economic development. What do you see happening? Some initial information. They also met with Cornell, Ithaca College, and city government, as well as our economic development resource providers. Over the course of the summer, they've been putting together a community survey, which we will launch out into the community right around September 25th, as far and wide as we can get, to get a little bit of information from the community at large. They're doing a deep dive on data, anywhere from housing to workforce to industry clusters. Over the course of the summer, they're going to be back here in September. We identified focus groups for workforce, IAED's board, which is about 32 members that represent almost every sector of our economy. We're going to be doing some focus group meetings at the Tompkins County Council of Governments, and we've also invited all the planners from all the towns and villages that have planning staff. And they're just going to go through with each different group. Oh, the fourth one, I'm sorry, is entrepreneurs and business leaders. So they'll go through with each group with a series of questions. I can say I got them yesterday, but I haven't looked at them. In our discussions, it was really about just identifying where the opportunities, where the challenges are, where folks see important inroads in growing our economy over the next 5 years. Yeah.
Amanda.
Thanks. So my question is partly about the budget book and the format. I'm trying to understand, like, it all.
You and me both, Amanda.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the first chart, the department requests consolidated budget expenditures and revenues. How is that different from the next chart? Consolidated budgets, 5% cut, and yeah.
Yep, so the first chart is just what the department presented as their proposal, their initial proposal. And then the second one is Lisa's recommendations.
Okay. So, and they're both include the 5% cut?
Yes, well, they're not subjected to the 5% cut because of their contract.
Right, okay. That was going to be my next question. I mean, Greg already asked, but I guess I'm still confused because for this one, under the fiscal year 2024, was more than this year.
2024 had a base amount plus $75,000 in over target for workforce development.
Okay, so that is factored into there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think I get it.
Question now.
Deborah.
So if the $75,000 for workforce development isn't included in your 2025 allotment, how will that program move forward?
We asked for that as one time to help build out the construction trades program and expand direct to work. So we are still working off of a federal grant, and then we're looking at other grant opportunities in the future.
Okay, that reminds me. So yeah, you did say that you would find other ways to fund it. Thank you.
I mean, we recognize that it's going to have to be funded in some way, shape, or form, and our goal is not to have the county funding that because you're funding our organization.
Yeah, that's great, because this isn't a year we're going to be able to fund much of anything. And as long as I'm talking, thank you very much for that program. That's something we've been asking for a long time, and Danny has really run with it and done a great job.
She has, and she's being asked by state officials to come and present to the building trades all over the state. She's getting a lot of traction on it, and I'm actually going to go and present on the program and in Denver at the International Economic Development Council's conference in a couple of weeks. So we're trying to get as much press and good vibes around that program as we can.
Thank you.
Greg Mezzi.
If I could just piggyback off that really briefly, just a kudos to Danny. When she was giving a presentation the other day, I asked her something, and I can't remember what it was, and she's like, oh, no, I took the program myself because I wanted to be able to go through it and get the credentials so that I could speak to it and I could understand how to build it out, what the pain points were. So, like, when we say she lives and breathes it, she absolutely does that. So, hold on tight because she's a special contributor to this community for sure.
Thank you. I think so.
Okay, anything else? Heather, thank you for coming tonight and giving us a snapshot of your department, your agency, I should say. And we're running about 10 minutes behind. We're doing pretty good. We're going to go to Cornell Cooperative Extension, and this is in your budget book at section 5, page 5. And Cynthia, I think, is here. Rob?
Don't mind.
There's another chair up here. Corey, could we move you up here, perhaps? Oh, he's moved. Well, that's all right. She's here over there.
Yeah, unless you sent them the presentation.
Norma and Corey, are you guys going to pull the presentation up, or?
Oh, I can't understand this.
Yeah. No, I'm not on. I'd have to get in.
Is this part 1 or part 2?
Yeah, I was going to say, so on the online budget book, because of the number of over target requests, it's on 2 pages, so part 1, and then it flows over to part 2.
No funding. Who's that?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. And I'm not sure where the presentation. So,
Yeah, I have her present.
Thanks, Randy.
sorry. Would you like for me to hook up?
I'm working on it.
You got it, okay. Well, I'm Cynthia Cave-Gaetani. I'm the Executive Director at Cornell Cooperative Extension.
A little closer to the microphone, about 6 inches if you
How's
can.
that? Is that better?
That's
Okay. So let me repeat myself. Cynthia Cave-Gaetani. I'm the Executive Director at Cornell Cooperative Extension here in Tompkins. And to my right is Robert Brown, and he is our Chief Financial Officer for Cornell Cooperative Extension. So thank you for taking the time to let us speak with you today.
Welcome to you both.
Thank you. So I'm going to, perfect timing, thank you. So I'm just going to give a broad explanation of Cornell Cooperative Extension. It's a very complicated organization. Our main mission is to help families, individuals and families, and communities to thrive, live well, and reach their potential in Tompkins County. Tompkins County is served by Cornell Cooperative Extension with around 108 people on average. That number will go up in the summer, so that would depend on our summer programs, including our 4-H camps and other initiatives that run through the summer that may drive that number up in the 120 to 125 range. Cornell Cooperative Extension covers 5 different issue areas, and within those issue areas, on average, 37 programs are operated through Cornell Cooperative Extension. We manage 96 budgets and a budget of $9.5 million. And in regards to the county budget, the backbone funding primarily covers our operational supports, our 4-H youth programs, our food system sustainability programs, and our health education navigation program. So our agency is operating from a strength-based position. The morale at our agency is very high. Our programming and our relationships within our community have been very strong. Operational management has gone through some reorganization and is on solid footing. And we have successfully achieved our CCE accreditation and 2 consecutive years of clean audits. So we're very proud of that. However, we do have recognition that through this internal organizational restructuring and through the auditing process, pardon me, we have identified some complicating factors to our financial operations, and that has evidenced some reduction to our operating revenues. So bottom line, through this, and we will talk a little bit more in depth about it in a moment, CCE has been providing services at a cost to the agency, and it really is struggling to continue to absorb those costs, and in all honesty, can no longer afford to do so without compromise to our programs. So next, thank you. So in terms of what the financial impact would mean in terms of the 5% reduction, we would allocate those cuts to our 4-H youth programs, and that would be in collaboration with the County Youth Services, in essence about 1 FTE. And it would also reduce the operational support for our climate change and workforce development program. It's also important to understand that there are some other negative effects from reducing the county funds that end up resulting in further reductions in our association's overall budget. The 5% reduction will concurrently reduce our New York State match funding, and that would impact us this year with an additional $1,900. So for us, that would be a total impact of about $40,000 reduction. So I'm going to turn this over to Rob quickly to give some further in-depth view of our budget impact.
So I'm going to go here with just a quick overview of our financial profile as an association. We are Cornell Cooperative Extension of Tompkins County. We're one of 52 independent cooperative extensions at the county level throughout New York State. And I'm told that we're the second largest at our 9.5 million. Suffolk is twice our size. We don't, although we have Cornell in our name and we would not exist without it in our relationship, we do not receive direct funding from Cornell. There's no Cornell wedge there, and other than a couple itty-bitty subcontracts with individual faculty people, it's not hidden in there either. We receive regulatory oversight from the university. We receive guidance on how we and the other 51 interpret the missions the state legislature gives us, and we pay objectively fair prices for our business services we receive from them, but you know, we don't have a direct funding stream there. Of our overall revenue profile, that largest red wedge on the right-hand side, that 33%, our employees are statutory employees, so New York State contributes on fringe benefits for all of our staff. So that is not liquid revenue. It's a direct state contribution into the benefits. So every dollar we receive and that we pay as direct compensation to employees is really $1.64. Overall, you know, we have our program revenues like camp fees and so forth. We have some private contracts, state contracts, a couple federal, and philanthropic giving is only 1% of our revenue stream. It's an opportunity there. We've made strides in passive fundraising, but have a lot of potential to grow there if we can develop our strategy for it. But really, we're talking about the county piece, which is the lower left section of that pie chart. That 14% in bright blue, that's our county appropriations, and for our accounting purposes, that's target and over target funds. Then about 9% of our revenue is in direct contracts with county departments for services that we provide to or in collaboration with them. And then we also consider our county funding to be in the direct relationship with that gray 2% wedge right to the moving further clockwise from those, which is our New York State match. Every target, over target contract dollar, or if we had donated facilities or other services like some other counties do, that would also factor in. New York State provides some match on that. So it's a direct part of our revenue cycle. And just as a heads up, in a different environment, we'll soon be asking you to entertain a motion as a legislature encouraging our governor to maintain stable funding for that cooperative extension match of county dollars.
So next.
Okay, so here's a bit more just exclusively focused on our appropriations. That bar chart on the left, the red are the past 2 years and next year of our target and over target funds. So just putting it in comparison, the current recommended budget as it is altogether is about a $200,000 decrease in overall support from the county to our association versus 2023. The bars right on the side are two variations of looking at our over target requests, which really fall under two categories. We've got our maintenance of effort, OTRs, which is the paler blue immediately to the side of that lowest bar. That's just really maintenance of effort funding of the restoring our target request and administrative capacity. And I would point out that with that, it's still less of a county contribution than it is here in 2024. And then if one were to just take all of our over target requests under consideration, you all voted for it, then that farther right bar is what that would look like. Our side-by-side comparisons are looking at how we might do our internal allocation with the 5% cut on the target funds. We allocate our target funds across all of our issue areas. That's what we call the 5 missions that the state has given us. And the county funding is really the backbone for those on our more nimble parts of expenditures that are not strictly constrained by contracts in those areas. We haven't written our budget yet. A lot of our final decisions are going to depend on yours, so this is just talking about a scenario. Nothing's baked in stone. But our best prognostication of where we would apply the cuts is in a significant reduction to our nimble, flexible funding in the Environment and Climate Change Department. It has some of the strongest funding of all of our issue areas overall. This is just what provides flexibility and the ability to move outside of the narrow constraints of our contracts. It would also necessarily impact our 4-H youth programs. It's just where it has to hit. And a reduction to our administrative costs. And where I talk about the administrative bucket, that's our administrative staff, our facilities, but it's also the backstop for all of the programs. You know, any program that runs into financial distress, it's administration that covers it. So admin is the backstop for programs too.
Thank you. So our first OTR and our highest priority is in the budget restoration. In an effort to move forward and toward sustainability, and as demonstrated, our maintenance of effort, we respectfully request the restoration of that 5% reduction to our base budget.
Number 2 here is $25,000 on year 3 of 3 of an administrative capacity building over target request, originally submitted in 2022 under the recognition that our association had been operating for a couple of decades with grossly under-resourced administrative operations that had created backlogs, complications, and just not enough hands to do the amount of work that was necessary for our size. We started last year at $75,000, $50,000 $30,000 this year and $25,000 for the third and final year of this recommended OTR. The purpose of that has really been the centerpiece of a lot of system improvements that we've done. I mean, administrative business management and efficiencies is my jam. I could put you to sleep with it and use your entire meeting and not be done. But we've accomplished 5 years of catch up on financial audits, as Cynthia mentioned. The most recent 2 without comment. We've resolved all outstanding state and federal grant audits. As of October of 2023, we regained our Cornell Cooperative Extension System accreditation, and we're able to adopt a true indirect cost rate of our overhead costs based on independently reviewed financial statements outside of our immediate interpretation, which has significant funding implications for us. We'd been operating under a 10% de minimis indirect rate up until the point where we were positioned to do that. Again, in October, we were able to adopt our true indirect rate of 16%, which over time, as we're able to secure and negotiate a new contract, is going to put us in a much better position for stability and capacity. And again, I could just go on all day about the amazing bureaucratic things that this has helped to achieve. It really is cool, folks. And we're also asking you to
defer that to another day.
Yes. And we're asking you to consider this one, which has been recommended as year 3 of 3, as a companion with our next request, which is an extension of our association administrative capacity funding. The original drawdown rate, the 75/50/25, was based on how the outcomes of this, including our indirect rate, will pick up funding on our overhead expenses and program backstop. But with our multi-year contracts, like one funder has been incredibly gracious and allowed us to reopen it in the middle of a multi-year contract and renegotiate it, our true IDC, bless their hearts. But none of our county contracts have we renegotiated, none of our federal or major state ones. So we're not really realizing those benefits yet. And we've also taken some hits as a result of the reorganization years operating at de minimis, which has come directly out of our own fund balance and that we are seeking to recover. And then there are voluntary relationships where we may consider a less than full indirect rate, such as in particular with our contracts with county departments. There's one county department that we contract with at our full indirect rate. The rest receive discounts or low fee-for-service rates. And compared to our 2021 value of the CCE Tompkins fund balance, we've used 18% of our 2021 fund balance value on discounts on IDC for county contracts. That's about $120,000. As part of all the great things we did catching up on accounts receivable, collections, and so forth, we also had to write off about $200,000 worth of uncollectible bad debt, which was another 28% hit to our general fund balance. So we're really looking at all the work has been great. We've gotten to wonderful places. We've got good ideas already. We've built the launch pad. We've lifted off of it, but our feet are still just a couple inches off the ground. And we're asking you to consider renewing the support for another year as we pursue those contracts at our full indirect rate.
Thank you. So our fourth OTR priority is in an effort to become more sustainable long-term. It is a philanthropic development coordinator, and I will precedent this priority OTR with the fact that when we originally developed this, a full understanding of the county budget was not very well understood. That being said, I think it's still very important that we present this because we feel there is value in demonstrating the potentials of this OTR, and we still would like to request your consideration for it. Our CCE program leaders, they're experts in their areas. However, the majority of the fund-seeking activities for Cornell Cooperative Extension fall in the laps of those program leaders. So What that means is that instead of our experts leading the program development and the program implementation, they are instead more focused on funding the programs that they are charged to lead. So we know this is not an optimal strategy. We also know that Tompkins County has needs and priorities that are very diverse, and it is our charge as Cornell Cooperative Extension to be responsive to those needs and those priorities. A diversified, more community-based funding stream allows us to better serve and respond to the Tompkins County community. So our strategy with this OTR is to use it as seed money, as we have before, and seek financial stability and with it increase our program responsiveness through the creation of this philanthropic development coordinator position. We fully expect that this role will become self-sufficient, either on or before the 3-year time frame. And we view that this role will raise some new unrestricted funding sources that will allow us to be more nimble in our program development and delivery and our innovation. We do have a very strong track record for this, applying this model of the seed money for OTRs. We have some very novel and self-sustaining high-impact initiatives. I have included a packet, I believe all of you have received, that identify 2 specific programs as models and examples of successful use of OTR seed money, and the breadth and the scope of these programs, I hope you will see, are vast and very impressive. The 2 examples I've included are the Energy Warriors Cozy Basement Pilot Program and the Student Resource Navigator Program. Both of these are exceptional programs. They're remarkable in their scope. Many of you may have heard about them, and I am more than happy to go into much more depth about these programs more thoroughly at committee if that would be acceptable. For the purposes of today, I hope you'll take the time to read and review the documents I've provided. But I will say, with respect to the Energy Warriors Cozy Basement Program, because of the generous support of the OTR, this was 2022 and up until 2024, it is now self-sustaining for 2025. So the bottom line request for this OTR is to better serve and to better achieve long-term financial sustainability and consistency, and to optimize our staff time, those experts, to develop more innovative and responsive programs, and to make sure that the programs that are in existence are optimized in their implementation. So CCE requests a multi-year OTR of $65,000 in 2025, followed by 30 the following 2 years, with the expectation that it will have achieved self-sustainability. Our 5th priority, and this is a county administrative recommended amount, thank you, is a 3 of 3-year OTR. This is the other example that I alluded to earlier that is also a very successful model. We'd like to report on this successful status. This Student Resource Navigator Program, again, was made possible from OTR seed money. I'd really like to impress upon you the greater impact of this investment and the reason for the continuation for one last year of this OTR. So in brief, the Student Resource Navigator Program was developed from a countywide understanding that there was a major need to connect people to currently available but underutilized resources and services. This program connects patients of Tompkins County to a wide range of services such as food access and housing. Right now, this program is working with patients of 4 separate medical practices, and it serves all demographics. But notably, those that participate in this are disproportionately likely to belong to the more vulnerable populations, and that would include people of color, low income, and part of our LGBTQ+ community. So the seed money from the county that has been provided, thank you, has allowed CCE to build this program and to create our partnerships and to develop other funding streams. Currently, CCE Tompkins provides the management, the coordination, and the development of this program while it's partnering with Cayuga Health, the Cornell University Office of Academic Diversity Initiatives, and the Cornell Brooks School. Our next step, coming in November, will be to expand this program to a 15-member network of community-based organizations, otherwise called CBOs, and that will start in November. It will begin working with the patients of 7 health care practices, and that will be led by Cayuga Health and HSC. So what are we asking for continued funding for this last year into 2025? We anticipate that one more year of support from the county will enable us to build on the funding we've already secured from our partners, continue this program and the growth and the trajectory, and it will be financially integrated into a partnership network by 2026. So again, thank you. And then our 6th priority area is a youth program transportation request. This, I will acknowledge, is not one of the recommended OTRs, but again, I would wish to submit this for your consideration. So many people know 4-H. 4-H youth programs, in order to provide access to the programming throughout the county, it's required that we provide transportation for the youth for pretty much all of our programs, our after-school programs, our summer and our youth programs, and any other operational programs that we offer, and there are several. And we know that transportation can be otherwise a barrier to participation. So we provide programs to most of the rural areas in Tompkins County. So it is possible that your youth in your municipality may be riding our vans. So we have one 2008 Chevy Express van that is going to be taken off the road. We've been told as such that we will no longer be able to keep that on the road. So it will not be passing inspection, and that will be happening in, I think, the end of February of 2025. The van is in really poor repair, and it is beyond its usable life. So as such, we propose a one-time purchase of an electric, which is the reason for the cost, 12-seat van for youth programs. And this would enable the CCE Tompkins to continue to provide that safe access to our marginalized, underserved youth in a very safe and accessible way. Please know that we are seeking and we have sought funding from other sources. This is not our only avenue of which we seek funding. We've gone through other charitable organizations, private organizations, local businesses. We'll keep looking. Thank you. And 7 is our ED&I coordinator, and I'll pass that on to Rob.
It's me again. Most of you know me from my human rights work well before my association with CCE Tompkins, and I've been proud to serve the county government on WDIC. My small part in the county's equity and diversity officer position and so forth. I'm really glad, having come into CCE Tompkins, that the organization is also deeply committed to DEI principles. I came on board middle of last year. CCE Tompkins has been trying since 2022 to become the first county Cornell Cooperative Extension Association in New York State to have a DEI-focused employee. We share a unified job position structure through the entire state, and the system itself didn't even know what to do with our ask. They're like, you want a what? So we're trying to create this position for the sake of our community, our staff, our programs, but also to trailblaze a pattern for hopefully the rest of state CCE to follow. Although we are cooperative extension, and our whole thing is putting knowledge to work, going out. We're educators as well as service providers. It would be utterly hubristic for us as an association to create a DEI coordinator position and then immediately jump out into the community and say, hey, now now we're going to teach you about how to do it. The creation of the position is intended at the outset to be more inward-facing, to do the work, connect with the research on what works in workplace diversity initiatives and what doesn't, stuff like that, and then build the relationships and collaborations potentially to move towards that educational role. So this would be for the creation of that position, and also some to cover staff time for employees who are on extremely rigid funding sources to participate in our DEI activities. We've got an inequality in our building based on who's funded on something that allows them to do extracurriculars like this, and those that are extremely rigid on the, if you're not doing specific program activities, you're not getting reimbursed. And when the person's entire job is based on that grant, then we have to find someplace else in order to support them doing that kind of work.
Thank you. And so our final priority 8 is our year 2 of 2. This is our Tompkins County Food System Plan. This is a county administrative recommended amount of $25,000. The reason that this is our last recommended priority has to do with the fact that this OTR was approved in 2024 in an amount of $50,000, but due to a lot of interfering factors, we were delayed in the implementation of using this funding. We've started to draw down, and we anticipate about half of that will be utilized in 2024. Therefore, we are asking that the other half of this be extended into 2025. And I believe that is our last slide. And I thank you for your time and receiving of any questions.
Well, let's open it up. Questions, folks. Randy.
Yes, thank you, Cynthia and Rob, for that. In the first budget restoration priority 1, what do you typically give a cost of living increase to your employees? And would that mean that you wouldn't do that, and also you would reduce one position? Is that what that means?
Actually, yes, that would be correct.
And also, you mentioned that there are 96 budgets.
Mm-hmm.
So, what does that mean, Rob? I mean,
That means that I never get bored. It's such a wonderful place to finance direct. So a lot of our budgets are based on specific funding streams. So Cynthia mentioned our Career Pathways Workforce Development Project. That's one program, but it's currently 4 budgets based on funding streams and activities. And they can range from anything like our Master Gardener volunteers, $1,000 budget per year, to our Southern Tier Regional Clean Energy Hub at $800,000 a year.
Rich.
Yeah, just to be clear, you had indicated the Career Pathways, that consortium of programs. You found a way to fund that.
You betcha.
That's really good news, because we've done it as an OTR over a course of years, but it's great to hear that it's launched. I'd had some conversation with Aloja about this, and he had indicated it would be very helpful in seeking grants if there was some small portion still coming from the county to show that we're in the game. Do you think you can work around that, or?
Yeah, we can. And within the extent we retain a budget for our discretionary spending in our environment and climate change area, that's where workforce development lives with us. That would be a part of how we would apply that.
Okay. And in past years, when CCUs come in, you've reminded us of the multiplier for every county dollar. Do you have that number in mind?
Yeah, it's 50 cents on the dollar for the first 100,000, and then 5 cents on the dollar for everything after.
Thanks.
Other questions? Shauna Black.
Thank you. I had a question in regards to the Student Resource Navigator, and was wondering if you could tell me how many people have gone through the program?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
There should be some data, actually. I know that's quite a few.
Okay. And no need, if you want
I
to
can
get back to us later.
to you. I was hoping I had it,
Okay.
in my little bag of tricks here. but
Okay,
I don't.
sure. I think my only question is, can you tell me also how much the other partners are contributing? How many students you're working with? And it seems like there are many navigators here in our county that are helping with something very similar, including our own moms program, who has people working with people that are expecting. So I'd want to know how this is very specific to the care needs of this population.
Sure. So really, the point of the Student Resource Navigator program, we partner with, the navigators are actually students through Cornell University. The partners, and the university actually pays for the Student Resource Navigators to do the work. We are the managers. We have one FTE assigned to actually the coordination and the management of this program. And a big piece of what has come from this is the platform through which referrals are occurring. So we've been integral in developing a platform for the referral system between the medical providers and the referring that go out into the community. So that we are the primary receivers of the referrals from these doctors' offices. When they are screening positive for missing a social need, they will be coming to the Student Resource Navigator, where they assess what their needs are and navigate them to appropriate areas. That extension will eventually, as of November, extend to navigation to other partners, including HSC. So all of our community-based organization partners, and there will be 15 of those here in November, are experts in their areas. So there are several members that are part of that CBO group, and they will be able to navigate patients. And then there's a loop back and a completion of the cycle for the patient to make sure that what they were referred to was utilized and successful, and if not, they're re-navigated. The platform itself is in preparation for the New York State 1115 waiver, which is another level of addressing a similar approach, but specific to a Medicaid, Medicare population. So whereas currently the Student Resource Navigator program, as it exists through Tompkins County, addresses all demographics, that particular 1115 waiver addresses specifically that population. So our expectation is to continue with meeting the needs of the community outside of that small identified group that the 1115 waiver will also address, and continue supporting Tompkins County through that same process using that platform. So it's a very, it's evolving program. Did I answer your question okay?
Yeah, if you could get back to me on the number of clients and then the number of students and the contributing partners, that would be great, though.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you'll share that.
Other questions? Thank you. Thank you particularly for the very clear explanation of your over-target requests.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Well, we're running about 20 minutes behind right now, but we're doing pretty good. We're going next to workforce development. That's section 4 of your book at page 317. And I think we have Chris Spann and Diana Killies with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Let me get set up so I can bring up the presentation. Okay. So everybody can see that then?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first off, thank you for having us. I know I'm on a time limit, so you can keep the clock running, but I just want to thank a few people before we get started. Diane Eccles is our Deputy Director, used to be our Fiscal Coordinator. She's the brains behind the budget. We have a budget because of her, so we can do our job and everything, so thank you. And she's also experienced 4 different directors since she's been with the county. I'm the 4th director, so she's really been the glue that's been holding us all together before I've been here, since I've been here, and I look forward to doing more with you in the future. Thank you to Norma, Corey, and Sam for answering all our budget questions, and we won't miss your calls back to us at the office. And lastly, thank you, Lisa Holmes, for everything that you've done for the county, everything you will do before you retire, and thanks for being you. And just feel free to watch us on YouTube next year if you ever get lazy or bored or anything. So.
If you're having trouble sleeping.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Definitely. But yeah, so Tompkins County Workforce Development helps job seekers find employment, education, training, and supportive services so they can seek living wage jobs. We have a full-service career center. It's called Tompkins Workforce New York. You can find it at Center Ithaca. Along with this, we're the main convener of workforce stakeholders. We collaborate with business, nonprofits, education partners on initiatives and systems change. So I know Heather McDaniel mentioned us earlier. We collaborate with them. We collaborate on pathways with Aloja, with CCE. There's plenty of other partners that we have also. But along with that, we also do job fairs. So we co-lead the World of Skills Jobs Fair. We just recently had one for those with disabilities and going into transition into the adult world. And we're also working on more for the future. We do career expos. We had the Manufacturing Expo, which is an annual event every year at TC3. Last year we had 350 youth come out. So there they interacted with different manufacturers in the area. They got to have hands-on experiences at the tables, like feel the tools, talk to the actual workers, like look, see, smell, feel everything, and just really open up their minds to a career out there. Right now, we're probably gonna have 400 people come this year. And then there's also the Healthcare Expo that we co-chair with Whole Health, and that's every other year. And that probably had around like 500, 600 kids, I lost track. But same thing, we had small little sessions for them with leaders in different areas. So for example, in healthcare, you know, it could be, you don't have to just be a doctor, you know, you could do physical therapy, different things like that, be an aide at home. So we expose everyone to different things. And our board, our chair is from Tompkins Financial, Borg Warner's on our board, Wegmans, Lev Kitchen. So our hands are everywhere, but it is really important to remember, like, we do a lot of different things, but we are a human services department. At the Career Center, our limited staff is doing frontline work every day with participants that come in. We serve high needs populations, so there's a lot of work that goes into that, extra supports that are needed, follow-up, everything. And along with that, the other thing is important to remember is we primarily serve high needs populations. So I talked about employment, education, and training and supportive services. Our funds go towards those who need it most. Of course, anybody can come in and get help with a resume and a cover letter, help finding jobs and things like that. But when it comes to like talking about where our funding's going, that's where it's really going to. And this is workforce development, this first slide. This is our summer youth employment program. This summer we have about 120 youth. This is for youth ages 14 to 20 who are high needs, and it gives them a first chance to have a job experience in the real world. As we know, it's all hard to find a job, and it's especially hard to find a job if you're youth and if you come from a high needs population or you just don't have the same resources that other people have. So this is a chance for them to interact with adults, have a supervisor, work with our staff to be on the right path. And speaking of the emerging workforce, we also have our Job Link program, which also is a year-long experience all across the county. That's for youth ages 14 to 24, where they can be placed at a location, a work site, and they work with a supervisor there and then with our staff. So these things take a lot of time, and currently our staff, we don't have enough people to do that to give them a good experience. And our work sites are all across the area. We're out in Enfield, Lansing, Freeville, Groton, Newfield, for our work sites for the youth. So it's a lot of like going all over the place. But I'll move on to the next slide. So this is kind of like where we're at right now, the growth of TC Workforce Development. So last year, the Office of Employment Training and Workforce Development became one to become Workforce Development. When I got here, when looking at the separate departments, there was extremely high turnover. There was at least 2 different directors in each department before that, and then not much structure or cohesiveness at all in communication. In October, when you all appointed me as director, I was tasked to kind of reunite that department. So right now we're working on our procedures, we're repairing relationships, and then we're working with groups that we haven't worked within a few years or never worked with. So we're doing a lot of different things like that. And during that process, we definitely had to cut our staff just due to our budget. So we only get a limited amount of funding from the federal government for our services, and then a limited amount from the county. So really a gut-wrenching process, just running through the numbers with Diane. So we'd usually have those meetings in the office. Like, we did have to cut a couple positions over the past year and a half. Just cut all over the place. Like, we used to have money for certain conferences, and I had to get rid of it. It would be nice if I could go to the national conference, but I'd rather have money for paper and toner so we can print stuff. So there's just a lot of like extra professional development stuff. I know that there's resources that we can seek with the county, but there's just a lot of stuff that we had to cut. Which has been a challenge, but we've kind of figured it out. But we really are at rock bottom with our staff right now. And this past year, I do know we definitely need another person at our Career Center, more than one person, but at least one person as a start. In 23, our FTEs were 13.25, and then it had to go down to 11.8, and then this upcoming year, it's gonna be the 10 of us. So we're just not really set up for success if we only have 10 people. And historically, if you look at the 2 departments, there's been at least around 13 people around. So that's a huge challenge that we have as a new department, and kind of like what I've experienced looking at us budget-wise and where we're going. Second, we're the main convener of workforce stakeholders. So a lot of people do and say they do workforce, which is great for work in our community, but we either collaborate with them, we fund them, we support them, or we're in the room talking with them about these programs. We really are like the glue that keeps everything together. We're the main convener of workforce in the area. That's what the federal legislation allows us to do. We have a lot of money to do that every year, and it is going to participants. And like I said, that is part of our work, is working with everybody all across the area. And then finally, we've just enabled residents to be aware and give access to programs that empower them to be in the workforce. For our Job Link program, where the youth have a job experience throughout the county, we've served 43 youth this past year. Summer youth employment last year had 113. This year we have around 120. We've served 291 adult dislocated workers, and then we've done transitional job trainings for 2 people. So that's for somebody who's been out of work for a while, and it's really hard for them to get back into the job market. So we actually, I collaborate closely with Aloja and Green Pathways. So we actually have somebody who now works at CCE. We created a transitional job with them at CCE through Aloja, and then our Career Center staff, Cindy Sloan. And it was a 10-week experience, and it went very well. And now they have unsubsidized employment, and they are actually like a literacy educator at CCE, which is very exciting. So that's just some of the programs that we do. This is the budget impact to operations. So we have the general 5% cut, and then we also have an OTR for an extra position. So this picture here is and a participant, Yasmin. She actually got her LPN through working with us, and then her son behind there was also did a work experience with us. So we have a communication specialist, and we have a newsletter that comes out every month. Hopefully you all get it, because you should. But just to refer to the article, when she, in her process of trying to get this LPN, she says, I have 3 kids. In between, like, halftime, I'm trying to read a paragraph of the textbook. She says, when everyone is tucked in, I have to study all night long. Everywhere she went, Yasmin was studying. She even played audio recordings of her lectures and textbooks in her car. Even with her children complaining in the passenger seats, by day she was in school, and by night she was working as a certified nursing assistant. Between parenting, working, and studying, there was little time to relax or have a social life. Basically, my life was on hold. Lots of long nights. another part is one of the challenges she faced was test anxiety. So Cindy recommended taking tips to soothe it. So Cindy is actually an adult staffer with us at the Career Center. So Yasmin said that was a big deal for me. And then the two also worked on developing resume and cover letters to be prepared for the job application, and of course test prep. So we're not just a funder. Like, I know a lot of people in the area say, like, go to Workforce, they have money. We are funding a lot of stuff, but we are also doing the casework, everything behind it. We're not just giving money to her. Like, we actually have staff who are working with this person. And like I said, that takes a lot of time. So a lot of people have different needs. Sometimes someone disappears from us and then eventually they come back. And then behind that, her son also was part of our youth program, so which is very exciting. But yeah, finally, in conclusion, she said, you have to give it your all. She says, her kids have been her support system while she works and studies. They're my team for real. So this is just an example of what will be cut. Like, that was a training. We had money to help cover her training. Work experiences are what I talked about, where the youth work at different locations throughout the area. Decrease in funding for supportive services. So what's supportive services? So how do you get from point A to point B? Say we cover your class. You may need a gas card. You may need help with that. You may need a book. You may need tools for your training. There's just a lot of different things that's written into the law that aren't meant to be there to be like cute and nice. Like, it's what the actual policy says. Like, when I was in grad school, I specialized in social policy for my master's in public administration up north, but this is stuff that people really need in these populations. So cutting this will just really handcuff us and future stories like this that can exist out there. And then we also need another staff. Like I said, we're bare bones at this point. Well, actually, I wish we were bare bones. Like, we were just barely any bones at this point. I wish we had bare bones, because during this restructure, we are seeing, like, we just need those extra people. And this is a major, first off, this is a major threat to the sustainability of our department. It would not serve, it threatens our service delivery. You're not getting, there's wait lists, you're not getting a comprehensive experience. So youth are supposed to get 14 different elements throughout their experience with us. So that's mentorship, tutoring, we can refer people for tutoring and other things like that, but job coaching, the work experience is another example of an element that they can get. So there's a lot of different things we should be doing for them and we're not able to do. And on top of that, there's documentation. There's tons of documentation, and that's how the state and the feds keep giving us money, is if we have proper documentation and everything. And we have audits every year. We have audits during the summer. We have audits within the county, which is great. So there's just a lot that goes behind that. And the staff is definitely overworked. And this is important at like all levels of the department, management, people working the front lines. Like, people are just very overworked. So I would not be surprised if people leave, like, just because of what is going on. I think that extra person will definitely help us. Like I said, a lot of the issues from the past have been corrected, like with the turnover and building relationships. Well, turnover hasn't been corrected because eventually people are going to hit a point of where they're going to leave because there's just too much work. So I just think that's just going to rear its head back pretty soon, is once people start to get burned out. We're just going to have to go out and search for more people and restart everything all over again. Those relationships are broken with our participants. So that's really the challenge that we're facing with this. And along with this, workforce is changing, obviously. You know, IAD is doing workforce. There's different programs out there. In the past, like, this is not like something we're doing direct to work with Danny. That's not like what workforce boards are doing across the area. Like, Heather's not exaggerating. Like, it's a big deal what we're doing. So we're putting, when direct work happens, we're heavily recruiting. I'm formulating the program with Danny. She's obviously the brainchild, the lead on everything, but I'm there working with her, figuring out how we can put all these pieces together. We have info sessions. Basically, our staff, we set aside 2 weeks of our time dedicated to direct work, because there's recruitment, info sessions, and then interviews, and then we need to figure out who qualifies for funding, who qualifies for the direct work program and everything. There's a lot that goes into that. So we have to go all in on our support for that. So that doesn't mean everywhere else in the world pauses. Like, we still have like Yasmin and other stories like out there that need help, but we have to go all in with direct to work because we're also partners with that. So that's where it would help if we had another person, because I do know with the last cohort, we had someone sick and then we didn't have anyone else to fill in to cover for that event on that one day. We figured it out, but just in general, it's a challenge. And then I believe how they're talking about Tompkins Build that's coming up. So that's another program that we're also going to be asked to be strong partners with, because we're helping fund a lot of these participants. We really have to be strategic in braiding our funds. You know, IAD has their money, we have ours, and there's other areas that have money where TC3 has money because they help with the stipend with that program. So we just have to be very strategic with what we're doing with the money at this point. So those are like really the two main challenges that we have. Basically, I have the standard slide that everybody knows. The first is the 5% cut, which I discussed, of the impact on training and education and work experience. And then the second is what I just talked about, the transition workforce specialist. So that person would be primarily working with our youth, but also on the adult side, they would be supporting programs like Direct to Work and Tompkins Build when we have heavy recruiting. And finally, like, we're not gonna grow without county funding. There's rising wage and fringe, which is great. I love that people get paid more, but that doesn't help our budget when we're not getting more federal funding. There's inflation, of course, so everything's going up, paper, toner, different things like that. We get approximately a third of our budget from the county. So it would be great if we could have more from the county, of course, because we are a county department, and we're doing a lot of work for the county, and we just really need that help. Like, we're really at rock bottom with this. Like, our federal money is not going up. Wage and fringe is going up. Like, eventually we're gonna have to start cutting people, literally, and we won't be able to do what we want to do. And I'm not gonna read through the priorities, but there's just several priorities that will not even be met. Workforce development is mentioned in the report. Equitable service going all throughout the area. We're not able to do that. And that's really what it's all about. This program on the side, Direct to Work, this is a graduating cohort. So we have so many of these stories. It doesn't matter where you're from, your age, how you look, what your education experience is. Like, if you put in the work, you should be able to have a shot at a meaningful career, and that's like what we're working for, and that's what we try to do every day. And we thank you for your time, and we're ready to answer any questions, and we appreciate your support and collaboration. We definitely are looking to be a strong partner in this new strategic operations plan, which we're also very excited about to collaborate on. Thank you.
Chris, you can take a deep breath.
Oh, I forgot to breathe.
Which one?
Yeah.
I do not have a question.
She told me to slow down before.
I just wanted to point out that in this budget, because it is in a different fund, you're going to see some revenues that are associated with all of their funding that makes it look as if there's zero local share. That's because we have to contribute to their fund through the A fund. So anything you're seeing in their over target request is actually a local share coming from the A fund. I just want to make sure folks know that. You only look at it once a year. This is true with the CD fund and with the D fund and the DM fund. And I'll say it again, probably 5 more times, but just wanted to let you know when you're looking at their over target requests.
Thanks, Norma. Shall we open it for questions? Amanda, then.
All right, thank you. I have a couple of questions.
Let me just say Amanda, and then Ann, and then Veronica.
Okay. So on your FTE chart, what is the JTPA participant?
Diane, you want to cover that one?
So a JTPA participant is a Job Training Partnership Act where we call them JTPA participants. They're the youth that we enroll in the county employment, and that's what they're categorized as.
Okay. And there's 6.8 of them.
So in the new budget system, they used to be separate, but with the money, how we figured it out with Norma was we took the amount of money that we had and divided it by the number of hours that each participant could work, and then came up with the I think it's 1 FTEs in there for the JTPA participants. Right. It's just that we categorized it all together.
Okay.
It could be, so the 6.1 FTE could be 50, 60, 100 participants. It was just all categorized together within the new
hours.
budget system.
Okay, okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. I'm still struggling with these charts. So going down, so there's the number 6290 Workforce Development Board, and then there's the Employment and Training 6292. Is this somehow related because they were combined?
So we had two departments. One was Office of Employment and Training, Workforce New York. It depends what you're looking at, what they call it, and the Workforce Development Board. We restructured last year. We finally finalized that after it was approved, the bylaws and everything, the charter was changed. We finally finalized that last year. So when we went into budget last year, we categorized it as the workforce development, and we kept as an umbrella, and we kept the Office of Employment and Training and the Workforce Board underneath of it so that we could keep the expenditures separate. So when I do my reporting to the state, it helped me out better on that side with the reports that come from the county.
Right, okay. So that's why under the, where'd it go? Under the one, there's 1,750,000, and then below that, there's a negative, 1,132,000.
So the revenues all went into 6290, which is the Workforce Development Board, and then we didn't put any on the 6292 side because all the expenses went against the total revenue.
Okay. And then, okay, other question is there's a line for food, and I didn't think we were allowed to buy food.
So we categorize it as food, but it's for the board retreat, and we have to get permission to get food for the board retreat.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I think that's it for the moment.
Ann Corman.
Thank you. I just had one question right now regarding the folks that you are training and helping them get skills to get out and get jobs. Do you have a sense of what percentage of those jobs are living wage jobs?
You know, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say they are. I have an actual percentage. I've been working with the Department of Labor on actually figuring out what those wages are, but I do know, like I said, a lot of our partnerships are with local employers. Like we worked with Aloja to place someone at CCE. With Direct to Work, all of those are living wage employers. And it really just depends on the field. I mean, we have people who are getting their CDL, and that's well paying. And then there's some people who want to do cosmetology. So that could be kind of hard when you are starting out or trying to start your own business or just beginning. So that's the best answer I could give to you. But in our area, I mean, we have a lot of living wage jobs in our area, so it's definitely our funding. There's also a restriction to our funding. They have to be jobs that are in demand in the southern tier in the state. So, I'm trying to like give a good example here, but I love art, but we can't fund someone for art history if TC3 had a class, because like that wouldn't be on the in-demand jobs list or anything like that, and things like that. So the training, people are being prepared for careers also, not just jobs. And like I said, the funding for those experience, like for example, the one class was LPN. They're meaningful careers, and then there may be cases where someone just needs a job, and then eventually they'll build up to something else. Because I know that if you go to a direct work cohort there, I remember the one gentleman, he was doing Uber Eats, whatever else there is, I can't DoorDash, all these different things while he was doing direct work, just to meet ends meet. And then I know he was doing that a little bit more, but then eventually he started. But believe not Borg Warner, but I'm drawing a blank on the name of the organization. But there are just cases where like where we have someone who just needs a job to support their family, and it may not be the right time for them right now to get into that career that they want, but we have follow-up services where we're required to be following up with these folks. So that goes into our data entry too. We have some services that have not been closed that should have been closed, but on our youth side, we've been very short-staffed in that area. So we are working on that to catch up. But like I said, it's a hard balance when you need to drive out into the rural area, go all throughout Ithaca, to have these like personal relationships, but then to also be sure to put all in the data and things like that.
Veronica.
Thank you. Thank you both for a good presentation first, like illustrating what you're doing, the context it's in, and why it's important for county priorities going forward. I say that just because my questions are more boring. One of them is back in that FTE table, one of your OTRs is listed as like an 0.5 FTE equivalent of the JTPA participant. And is that request exactly the same as that maintenance of effort request for $23,000?
Yeah, so the $23,000, that's like a split out of what we eliminated. We eliminated 2 work experience at 480 hours, and we eliminated 3 trainings that we could pay for somebody to participate in, or 2 trainings and supportive services to help people to get from point A to B, whatever they need for their training.
Thank you. And my other question is, I guess, given the complex mix of funding sources that you have, I guess, can you give me advice on how to think about this budget in terms of teasing out like what is funded by the county and what isn't? I wouldn't want to understand all the details, or maybe more to the point, like for each of the OTRs, would us funding them or not in any way impact funding coming from other places?
So we get a very limited WIOA funds. Every year, for the last couple of years, we've decreased like $5,000 every year. So that puts a strain on how much we have, to put for our staff. When we did restructure, what I did with the budget is I took most of our WIOA funds and put them towards the service provider side, because they're providing the front line and working with the customers and everything. And the administrative side, board side, I used more county funding for. I thought that was more appropriate, so that, we were using the funds where they should be funded. It's a struggle. We have funds that come in that we're not sure we're going to have in the future. We have a New York Scion grant right now. We have it for another year. They really the state likes it's for the disability and stuff, but we're not sure if we're going to have that funding passed next year. So it's kind of a juggle of where, we spend and what we're using for what, I guess. Is that answer your question?
Yeah, and to add, we don't operate in a county building. We operate in 2 separate buildings. So there's the old board department, and then I have the Career Center. So we're actually hopping back and forth. But we also pay rent on that. So we're talking 80 to 90K per year. We're basically mandated to pay just because this is what we were born into. So the new county building comes in 2028. So for the foreseeable future, we're putting down our 90K every year. And Center Ithaca, they have a history of raising the rent on us. So I would bet my life savings that's going to just keep going up. I mean, there's always something. It'll be inflation.
We don't recommend.
We do get casino tax. No,
Well, that's true.
Yeah, you don't know how much savings I actually have, so it could be nothing. I don't know. No, but no, thank you.
That's the thing with we work with NYSDAL over there, and Chris and I deal with NYSDAL on what our agreement's going to be for next year, and the lease is up the end of this year, so they're going to be renegotiating with
Travis Hyde.
Yeah, Travis Hyde. And So we're not even sure. I've put a number in there. I've increased it a little bit due to they wanted to charge us for a security guard, and we didn't have the funds this year. So we're not really positive that that number is going to hold fast for next year either.
Greg.
Yes, thanks both for your presentation and the passion for the work that you do, which is so critical. If I'm looking at the 5% reduction in your budget, it seems to be really in three lines?
Yes.
Staffing?
Yep, so we cut participant wage and fringe, and under program expenses where the training and the supportive services go in the county budget, so that was decreased too.
So my critique, if I can just for a second, is if we're already short on staff, why not challenge things like equipment or other, which I love that category, or travel and training, right? Those type of things to try to say, hey, maybe we can focus on the work with the staff, and maybe it's a light travel training year, as much as that's not ideal. Getting creative and flexible, because it seems like it just came into, if I'm looking at this, the most likely to pull at the humanity of the 14 of us in terms of OTRs as it relates to staffing, as opposed to truly looking at how do we make a reduction to try to preserve our staffing. And it may have been just the easiest way to take out large chunks or vacant positions that may not be filled. I'm just trying to get an explanation of why those areas and not a systematic sort of, I don't want to say death by, a million cuts. I don't like that expression, but, challenge some of the other line items to try to preserve what's actually sounds like is needed most.
So I did do that. I did take down like office equipment. We have a lot of new staff, and now they're requiring a lot of ergonomics, and we had to have some place to purchase that, not knowing in the future with the new staff what we need. So I did keep that a little bit. I did down the travel and training a little bit. We don't go to the national, it's NAWB conference anymore. We've taken that out. I did down the printing. I also downed some of the memberships and the office supplies.
And all our computers are out of warranty, I believe. So because we had to cut from there. We have to go to the NIATEP conferences. It's a required membership that's probably like at least $5,000, but then we have to go to Rochester for this year's conference. So the leadership goes. I didn't go last year to the youth conference that we had. I just gave up my spot so someone else could go. So there's this youth conference. So there's just different things where we're doing the best we can. And there, we definitely, I don't know if you can think of other stuff, but there's this also with inflation stuff going up, printing goes up, toner goes up, the rent goes up. Those are just stuff we literally can't get rid of. So we definitely went back and forth down the line. Like we created like a ton of versions where we still didn't have enough and we had to keep finding spots to cut. So that's just, so we did the best that we could. Like we're both very like, we know this is like tax dollar funds, like we're stewards of this. So we really are doing our best to plug away at that really. We actually had another youth position last year that just disappeared because like we just literally don't have any money to cover that position anymore. Like, with wage and fringe, it's like $100K. So that's just really at the point where we're just losing positions every year because like we can only cut so much from our budget. I feel like there's something else that's like we had to cut or something, but I think those are the big ones that really.
Well, I did cut the computer, but then I had to put them back in because all the staff at the Career Center, all their computers are out of warranty.
Yeah.
So I had to put that back in.
So they're out of warranty, but are they out of functionality?
So ITS likes us to get them every so many years once they're out of warranty and stuff. So they've been out of warranty for almost a year now. They're still working with them, but I put them back in the budget so that we could get them new ones, hopefully next year.
And I mean, they're also just not nice computers in the first place. Like, if I was allowed to, I'd buy my own computer. Just the amount of time I waste on it for it to load, it just doesn't move fast. Like, obviously, we do the best we can with what we have, but yeah, it's not like we have the best. And ICS does a great job with working with us, like helping with technology and everything. So we're grateful that we have them to work with us.
Okay. Deborah.
This is a question, I think, more for Lisa and Norma and Corey. I'm a little confused because I'm looking at their first OTR request, and you've got two categories. County administrator approved 5% cut OTR, not approved. Then you have the county administrator recommended, not approved. But you're cutting them 5% both ways. I thought that the recommended budget didn't incorporate those across the board 5% cuts. So can you explain that to me?
Sure. So there were, under the recommended column, there were some cuts that I was able to restore, but by and large, I was still not able to restore those 5% cuts.
So you had to pick and choose which departments got hit with the 5% cut. Okay, I just wanted to be sure I understood that. Thank you.
Unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. This was very helpful to us in our deliberations.
All right. Well, thank you for having us and doing this meeting. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good job, you guys.
We're going to take let's say a 7-minute break. And then we're going to come back. We've got 3 more presentations, and we'll call it a night after those. Thank you. Next up is our Finance Department. Lori Scarrett is our Director of Finance. This is on section 4, page 113 of your budget book.
Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. I wanted to start by thanking you for supporting the Finance Department over the past year. I've greatly appreciated it, and I hope you continue to support us and our efforts. I would like to start by introducing to you the managerial team from Finance Department. I know that they don't get to come here very often. You may not know who they are. I'll start with Drew Brayman. Most of you know him. He's the Deputy Director. We also have Daryl Tuttle. Give him a wave, Daryl. He's the Director of Account Services. And in the back, we have Joyce Burke, who's the Purchasing Manager, and Lisa Schott, who's the Treasury Manager. And they all worked very hard on putting together this budget and are here in case there's any really hard questions that I can't answer. So
We're very pleased to have them here tonight, too. We know they're over there, but we don't see them that often.
I'll start by reminding you, at a legislature meeting shortly after I started a year ago, someone asked me, Lori, tell us what you need. What does the Finance Department need? And I didn't know how to respond because I didn't know what I didn't know, but I do know now. And I've expressed this, I think, several times to several of you. Overwhelmingly, I feel that we need staff and we need some software. We need to improve our efficiencies and procedures in the office, and that's how we're going to get there. So with that, I will start the presentation. I wanted to just give everybody a quick refresher on some of the activities that the Finance Department takes on a daily basis. We maintain the financial records of the county and all of the reporting that requires. We audit and process all of the payments, so all of the accounts payables come through the Finance Department. We calculate and process the sales tax distribution with that very complex formula that somehow came into existence. We coordinate the issue of bonds and the related reporting for those. We prepare the annual financial report, which is required every year by New York State. We coordinate the public bidding and approval of purchase orders. We have receipt and custody of county funds, as well as investing those funds and administering the occupancy tax. We also maintain tax rolls, providing tax search and tax bills. We enforce delinquent property taxes for towns, county, and schools, and performing the auction for foreclosures every year. We issue certificates of residencies for students who are going to community colleges, and we are, oh, this is supposed to be on the next slide, but we are operating with antiquated, inefficient, and multiple software system and processes that need to be updated. We do all this with a staff of 15 employees in 3 divisions. So as you're looking through the budget book, you'll see there's 3 budgets for finance, and those are the 3 divisions. We have the accounting division, a purchasing division, and a treasury division. So as I said, we currently have 15 positions. However, since I've been here, they have not been 100% filled. As a matter of fact, as I went back into some of the archives, I went back as far as 2017, and it has never been fully staffed of those 15 or whatever positions were. So what has this done to the Finance Department? Well, we've lost a lot of institutional knowledge of how things happen at Tompkins County particularly. Many of the positions that have turnover were long-time 30-year plus employees, so when they left, we lost institutional knowledge. It has caused backlogs in the work. When it takes longer to do something, when you have to figure out how to do it, and we have less staff to do it. This has created some morale issues. We have increased use of overtime and compensatory time in order to get the job done. And this is my most concerning one, is the inability to follow up on special projects such as analysis, reconciliation, preparing enhanced reporting, training, and/or cross-training. To meet the required 5% reduction, we had to take some measures, obviously. Our target reduction was $73,893. Our department is majority consists of contracts and personnel. We don't have a lot of other miscellaneous type expenses. So to meet that reduction, the first thing that we cut was we currently pay for the auditing services for the Tompkins County Library and the Soil and Water. And although I would love to continue to do that for them, I didn't feel that that was appropriate at this time, a 5% cut. So those two I have recommended not be continued. Software maintenance fees for several towns and villages we were paying for. We don't even use that particular software, but we were paying those on behalf of those villages. That amounts to another $5,000. I have notified those towns and villages of this decision to cut this amount, and they will each have a bill of roughly $700, each of those municipalities. I also was forced to cut an account clerk position. This is a 35-hour account clerk, and the rationale behind that was I need some higher level accounting staff, and so in some of my OTRs you'll see that I am requesting higher level accounting staff. So the first OTR, the highest priority, is one we absolutely have to do, and this is for an accounting firm to help us with the remaining pieces of the 2 GASBs that we began implementing 2 years ago. GASB 87 and GASB 96, if you recall, were the leases and the software agreements. Originally, when we put in an OTR for these services, we put it in at $108,000, and we used a good chunk of that the first year. Second year, we reduced it a little bit because we brought a lot of the work in-house, but we still needed their help in assisting us. And this year, we're still gonna need their help, but with the purchase of OpenGov for the procurement is going to help us streamline getting information out of the contract system, which will help us. So I have cut that again down to $25,000. So basically this OTR started out at $108,000 and I'm requesting $25,000.
Could you remind our viewers what GASB is?
Sure, Governmental Accounting Standards Board, and that's a federal agency that puts out standards that we have to follow for accounting purposes.
This is a one-time or target?
This is a target, yes.
Ongoing expense.
The second over target request is for additional accounting staff. As I said before, we need some higher level accounting staff. We need somebody who can assist the departments with training and fiscal managers and guiding them through some of the accounting things. We need some help with policy revisions, procedure documentation, general ledger reconciliations, capital project reconciliations, implementing new software, I hope, continuing disclosing documents, assisting with resolutions and budget transfers, as well as working on any enhanced requested reports from you folks. We thought long and hard about what type of position to request, and I do really feel that this needs to be a higher level position. The third
Could you just go back one slide?
Sure.
Clarifying question.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure I understand. Does that say that you requested 152 and it was recommended at 147?
That's correct.
Okay.
So the 152 was the wages, fringe benefits, and a small amount for office furnishing. So the office furnishing piece of that was not recommended, and it's just the wages and salary.
Thank you.
Wages and fringe benefits. The third OTR, again, is purchasing, is again staff, and this one is particular to purchasing. This is one position. We currently added one a few years ago, and this would be a second one to help out in the purchasing. Currently, that division is a staff of 2, the purchasing manager and the purchasing specialist. So this would be addition to get us to 3 people for purchasing. We are anticipating that the purchases and bids will increase. Last year, they did 850 purchase orders or bids, and we're expecting a minimum of 150 more next year. So it would really help us. It would also give us an opportunity to do some cross-training and really provide extra training and help to departments in following the procurement policy. And the 4th OTR is for additional software. Currently, we use Excel for many tasks. This is a software that came to my attention about maybe 8 months ago. What it is, I feel, is a pretty reasonable price to get us off of some Excel spreadsheets, particularly in the regards to our debt schedule and bonding. Right now, we have these really complex multi-page sheets for keeping track of that, and this would allow us to put it in and then filter and sort and extract the data in numerous ways, as well as help us develop financial note disclosures that are required, and that all comes out of the software. The software would assist with what the accounting services that we were asking for the 2 GASB standards would help us with that as well. And once we got up and running with this software, most likely we wouldn't need that additional amount that we need, that I'm requesting in OTR number 1. OTR number 1. So I'd like your consideration in those OTRs. I'd appreciate it, and welcome to have any questions.
Shauna Black.
Thank you. For the account clerk, is there currently someone in that position?
Yes, there is.
Okay, and if this position was no longer, would they be offered another position within the county?
It's my understanding that they go on a preferred list.
Okay. Is that correct? Does it sound right, Lisa?
Well, they would be, I believe so. I'm not certain. I don't know that they would have rights to other positions, but certainly Human Resources would work with the individual for comparable titles in other departments and units.
Okay. Thank you.
Deborah Dawson.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Lori. You were very crisp. I didn't have to roll my eyes once. I want to be sure I understand what a purchasing specialist does. When the RFPs and RFQs that go out, are those something that falls within the purview of that position?
Yes, Joyce, do you want to talk to that more, or want me to handle it? Come on,
Yeah, you just find yourself a microphone and...
Yeah, so Joyce is the purchasing manager.
Assist me with many things. They
About
work
6
on-
inches away.
Yeah, just, that moves. Thank you.
Better?
That's
Is that better?
great.
Sorry.
There you go.
They assist me with everything that I do, but mainly, the one I currently have has been working on the purchase orders, and I've been working on the bids and solicitations. But by me being the only person working on that and her not really having the time to help me do more, I have not had time to reach out to departments, train them like they've asked me to do, things I would like to do, and to also learn more about the state guidelines and federal guidelines that I don't have time to research right now.
And so if we're proceeding with major capital projects, a center of government, a public safety building, a homeless shelter, do you anticipate that in association with those projects, there will be a lot more RFPs, RFQs, purchase orders?
I have already seen probably 150% increase in those since we've been following the procurement policy more. And there are many more to come, but the departments are overwhelmed as well now that they realize they have to do those. So we're all trying to work together, but without staffing, it's really tough.
Thank you.
Travis Brooks.
Lori, I know this is probably not an easy question to answer in the way I'm asking it, but with the software, over the course of the next year or two, how much, as far as time and effort goes, can you equate that to how much money that would save your department?
For the software particularly?
Yeah, switching over that versus what you're currently using. I know a lot of times when we go to new software, it actually ends up saving a lot of money over time.
I'm not sure it would save money per se, other than we would not need those additional services from the accountants to help us get through those 2 GASB standards. So I was estimating those at, I think, $25,000. So potentially not year 1, but year 2, year 3, and forward, that would be a savings. But the biggest savings would come from being able to extract the data, be transparent on the data, be able to report out to you the data in a much more efficient manner. Now we're kind of sorting through old spreadsheets that other people developed, trying to figure it out, and I am concerned that sometimes we miss something, or an error is made, or we didn't know the history. So this would allow us to get it in the system, be able to pull it out, so it would just make us more efficient.
Thank you.
Greg Mezzi, and Randy. Oh, let's get Norma first. She's got something to clarify.
To help Lori out with that too, because part of the reporting also, I've had to actually code every year, pull the data from the system and code it so that I can give them the numbers that they have. So it's a tremendous amount of time. So in that way, it is a cost savings because I could be doing something else.
Greg?
So that goes back to my first question with the consultants being put in target. That's money that would be in a maintenance of effort budget in 2026, but we don't have any other money to spend from fund balance, so we really can't do one-time money type things? Is that why it ended up in target? Because if you're saying you may not need that, why are we putting those funds in target rather than one-time do the OTR for the software? Because is that a one-time expense or is that an annual expense?
So I put it in the target because I don't know if the OTR for the software will be approved. And it's not recommended from county administrator, which I understand, but if we don't have help getting those standards done, I have to have the accounting services. So that's why that's priority number 1, and it's target without knowing any of the other parameters.
So would you be willing to make that a one-time request if the software OTR was approved?
For 1 year, yes.
Or even a multi-year OTR. You know, there are ways we could do it with the idea that we'd phase it out if we get the other one, yeah.
Randy Brown.
So what's driving the big increase on number of purchase orders and contracts and bids? Is that a state requirement we weren't following?
So we have a procurement policy, and pieces of that are state mandated, and some of it is a policy that was written for professional services that is a little bit more up to us to some degree. There's some parameters that we have to follow, but it is up to us to some degree. There is a history, I guess, of departments not adhering to that policy, and we've been really watching that, and as they come to our attention, we've been working with the departments to follow the policy. So that requires RFPs and bids to be done, and that historically hasn't been done all the time.
So it's our internal policy that's driving most of this?
I don't think it's just the internal policy. I think it's a combination of all of that. I think the internal policy can be tweaked a bit, but not significantly.
Okay.
And the capital projects as well, right?
Yes, any additional capital projects all go through the purchasing division.
Yeah, 150% increase, that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot. So I was trying to understand when was our policy redone, would be last done? Should dollar amounts be increased? I mean, I'm just curious about that, so, thank you.
Okay, I had a question. You talked about no longer doing the audits for soil and water and TCPL. Have you talked to them about this? Can they absorb that in their budget, or is that just going to transfer and they request us to pay it as an over target for their budgets? And of course, John's here, we can ask him that question directly, but TCPL is not.
Yes, I reached out to all of the affected entities for all of the cuts that were outside of the county, and although none of them were happy about it, I do believe that they are planning to absorb it in their budget.
Thank you. Other questions? Lori, very clear, thank you, and thanks for all of your staff for coming over, it's great. Next up is Soil and Water, John Negley. John, welcome. And John's budget in our book is section 5, page 57.
If I can share my screen here, sorry.
All right, take your time.
Right, there we go. Well, hopefully I can give you a few minutes of time back. I'm hopefully quick and painless. As most of you know, what we do, just a little bit of overview of Soil and Water. We have 7 full-time staff members. We occupy the office space at Public Works Facilities, 170 Boswick Road, and our mission statements to assist units of local government and citizens in natural resource conservation. And we do have a small fleet of equipment for erosion and sediment control practices that we update and maintain. Just a little bit of history on our appropriations over the past 10 years. So we've been steadily increasing with appropriations. You can see in 2020 the hit that COVID had on us, what we were requested in brown, and then in green here was what was approved, and then finally what was received and appropriated. And it would be nice to be able to come back to those pre-COVID levels, but economics the way they are, and you all dealing with tough budget season, so it's obviously not in the cards for this year. But there are some good news items that we will share, and I think the biggest part of my presentation is how much a soil and water district can leverage the county funds for state and federal tax dollars that will come back into the county. So again, this is just a comparison of Tompkins County with other counties' appropriation. The largest there being over $700,000 a year appropriated, and the lowest being just under $200,000. So we're right in the middle. So thank you for that. So what am I coming here today for with a request? We're a maintenance of effort budget of $353,000. So that would be level from 2024. A 5% budget cut would be a request of $335,350. And then we would add in the $8,500. I have it in the next screen, $10,000, but it'll be $8,500 for our audit services, which is an expense that we have to absorb into our budget. And then an OTR of $200,000 for a restricted fund reserve account that we have done historically every year on an annual basis to help us with cash flow for projects. So this is something that would make it a little bit simpler process. We can you'll see that. So the 5% reduction and how that impacts us, a $17,650 hit in revenue is going to affect either salaries and benefits, contractual services, or equipment operation and maintenance within our operating budget. So 22% of a full-time technician salary. It's kind of our entry-level salaries. Senior tech, 17% of that. 11% of our contractual services, which does include what we implement on the ground for best management practices. And then obviously that would affect 100% of our equipment operation maintenance budget if we were to pull specifically from that budget. And again, correction on this screen, it's $8,500 that would be an offload from the finance department as an expense to the Soil and Water District. So like I said, every dollar that the county spends on the Soil and Water District, we're able to go out and leverage $7.31 from state and federal revenue. So your $353,000 allows us to go out for state aid of $278,000, program deferred revenue, grant deferred revenue. So deferred revenue being able to go out into the hands of taxpayers and contractors and farmers for most of our programs and grants. So again, any reduction of that county appropriation is just, it makes it harder for us to go out and leverage those funds. The piece of good news and the ability for us to absorb a lot of that 5% cut and the $8,500 from finance is appropriation increases by the state in our Environmental Protection Fund for 2025 and Bond Act funding from the state that has allowed us to increase capacity for districts and form a regional coalition, which we'll talk about in the next slide. The issue is climate action goals are being handed down to the soil and water districts to implement on the ground. So the state is really looking at us to implement those climate action goals from New York State DEC, New York State Ag and Markets, rather than trying to maintain existing staff. So for 2025, we can cover it, but long term, this is something we need to really focus on implementation. And so what that is...
I'm sorry, BMPs?
Best management practices.
Thanks.
Sorry. So what that is from a state level is our Eastern Finger Lakes Coalition. So 11 soil and water districts, state ag and markets, state DEC have been working in cooperation the past few months to form this coalition in order to receive funding through the Bond Act into the hands of soil and water districts that can go on the ground for best management practice implementation. So $1.2 million was allocated to the 11 soil and water districts. So that translates to about $75,000 of funds that will come to the soil and water district, to our soil and water district for increased capacity building. So this is where we would probably absorb that 5% reduction from the county, being able to maintain capacity and then increase capacity. $42 million was allocated over a 5-year contract to each of those 11 soil and water districts. So that translates to $750,000 per district per year to do implementation. So this is not for capacity building. This is actual on-the-ground bondable projects that we can implement. So this is exciting news for soil and water districts, and being able to really have cash flow that we normally have been going out to grants and programs that were competitive and being able to really focus on on-the-ground implementation. But it's going to take staff and capacity building to implement that over the next 5 years. So with that also comes our request for the OTR. So the $200,000, we've been doing this on an annual contract, and I guess the best way to explain it is in picture format here.
That kind of looks like the sales tax chart, John.
Yeah, sorry.
Much clearer.
Colorful.
So basically, we have $200,000 in county funds that we have to request on a yearly basis, approve at our Soil and Water Board level, approve at this board level, and then it makes it to the county finance department that then has to have a contract and get it out the door to us that we can then actually utilize for making a payment to a contractor as we're implementing the best management practices. And then we have to ask for reimbursement from the state. They have to review it. It takes 3 to 6 months, and then they'll send a reimbursement back, and it flows back to this reserve account. And then December 31st, we have to repay that reserve account back to county funds. This one-time OTR request is specifically that, $200,000 that will go into our reserve account. We will have reporting to administration, county finance, whoever needs the reporting of that on a yearly basis so that we can show a balanced reserve account there. And this is all strictly for BMP implementation. This is not part of capacity building or operational expenses. So that's the OTR. I just wanted to throw this in there quickly, say thank you for the cold storage facility. You've probably seen details from county facilities on this, but we're going to be sharing this facility. It's great. We've been going up there kind of daydreaming about what to use the space for, but this is going to help us with our equipment and storage. So with that, any questions?
Start out with Dan Klein. Thank you, John.
John, I just wanted to clarify the $200,000 OTR. Is the purpose of this just to give you the money then so you don't have to keep requesting it each year and you'll just have it from now on?
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Deborah Dawson.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, for those of you who haven't been around as long as some of us have, we've had to lend Soil and Water $200,000 every year, and then at the end of the year, they pay it back, and then the next day, basically, we lend them another $200,000. And when Lori came along, she pointed out that this wasn't exactly, I'm trying to think of the best word, Lori. Kosher. Which is why we need to figure out some other way to do this. But, since you're getting all this money, could we borrow some? We could sure use it, John.
We'll pay it back.
I'm just wondering, I guess this question is more for Lori and maybe administration as well. If we don't create this limited reserve, how are we going to handle this $200,000?
So I support this OTR 100%.
Unfortunately, you don't vote.
I know, but I'm just letting you know, I'm all for it. I think I'd mentioned to you earlier in the year when this came to my attention that it is an appearance maybe of gifting, and it causes us a lot of work. I mean, we got to put the money in, we got to put the money out, and we got to keep track of that. So if we could just support the OTR, that would be awesome.
I mean, the money's not going to go anywhere. It's just that, on the books, it's going to look like we have $200,000 less. So I don't know how we could make this work, but it seems like we have to find some way to do this.
Yeah, the alternative is what we were planning to do, which was to put the 200,000, I didn't raise my hand, I'm sorry, Mike.
You're all right.
To put the $200,000 into the revenue so that we don't have to come back with a resolution to do this at the year end.
Right.
That is not Lori's preferred method, which is why we helped John put this OTR in.
So this money would probably come out of fund balance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
John, I had two questions. They're both kind of left over. One is, do you have anything that shows what we provide to our soil and water conservation district, the dollar volume, versus what other counties in the region do? In the past, we've been pretty low compared to others. And I didn't necessarily have it with you, but.
Yeah, that chart basically shows Tompkins County there in the yellow.
Yeah.
And then all the others are the adjacent counties next to us that provide support.
Okay, but you don't have like a dollar figure chart.
I can convert this into a dollar figure chart.
All right.
Looks like we're kind of in the middle.
One up high and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the top one, without naming names, so county to the north, that has I
think it's Cayuga.
A facility, okay, I didn't say. That has a facility that they rent out to other agencies for income. So again, it's that leveraging capacity where they have in the past been able to build this building, and now they're able to earn some income off of the rent of that building, so.
Thank you for that. The other question I had left over from last year is, how are you doing with your engineering? I remember you tried 2 years ago to hire an engineer and then weren't successful, so how are you with that?
Yeah, so I mean, 2020 was when we requested this engineering, and you can see how it was cut back. So we had to kind of do some adjusting, and we went out to contractual services for engineering, and we still are doing contractual services. But the Eastern Finger Lakes Coalition and the Upper Susquehanna Coalition, we are now kind of combining forces because we're finding Cortland County has a posting out there that's been out there for a year, trying to find an individual engineer for an individual county is hard enough, but let alone a soil and water district. There's just not many agricultural engineers out there. So it's something that maybe working with the workforce development, we can kind of build up that from the ground up. But it's a struggle to find those
Interesting, because doesn't Cornell have an agricultural engineering program?
They used to.
They're used to, okay.
Yeah, it's now biological and environmental engineering.
And my recollection is that we tried very hard to hire that person, and we just couldn't possibly muster up enough money to pay them what they wanted, so.
Annie has her hand.
Head next. Oh, Ann on the screen, sorry. Yes, Ann Corman, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks, and I transferred to my phone for a little bit. Thanks for the presentation, John, and so I'm glad we have come up with this, or finance and admin have come up with this creative way. So am I correct in assuming this does not have to be accounted for in some way each year? Is this something that you're going to have to report to the county on, or is this going to create more paperwork for you? I'm assuming it takes less paperwork for the county because we don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah, it's something we already do. It's just a report that then needs to get sent to the county administration.
Randy.
Okay.
Yeah, John, so the funds that's coming from the grant, is the county going to get $750,000 per year for 5 years? Okay, and so the $75,000 that the state's funding, is that a 1 year they're going to fund it for people to support that program, or?
So it's $750,000 over the course of a 5-year contract.
Okay,
Yep, so every year it's $750,000 for 5 years.
just for this county. And so all those, is that primarily agricultural projects? And do the people that apply and receive funding through the soil and water, do they have to pay a portion of that themselves?
So it's going to be split between agricultural and non-agricultural projects. And what we require as a soil and water district is usually a 10% cost share match. But that's something that we're looking at too. This is something that the state really wants this funding out the door and implemented as quick as possible to meet these goals. So it may involve just a 100% cost share on specific projects, but something for our board to look at and discuss.
Good job. Thank you, John. And next is our Youth Services Department. Youth Services Department and Recreation. Kate Shanks Booth is here, and I think Teresa Albert.
Mike, do you have the chapter and verse?
I'm sorry?
Section 4, 325.
Yeah, Section 4, 325 is correct.
John, would you stop sharing your screen, please? Thank you.
Say the best for last, right?
When you're ready, go ahead.
I know you all are tired, so we'll try to get you out of here. All right, so good evening. Thank you for allowing us to come and present our 2025 Youth Services budget to you. Throughout my presentation tonight, I'm going to be referring to the Achieving Youth Results Framework. I am doing this because in the county plan under the Strategic Priority Health and Safety, objective number 3 reads, improve the well-being of the youth in the community by implementing the Achieving Youth Results Framework. In order for that to be meaningful, I need to give you a little definition about what Achieving Youth Results is. Achieving Youth Results is a framework that tracks countywide indicators or data, allowing us to build an action plan to support youth as we attempt to provide positive youth development programming within the areas outlined by the Office of New York Children and Family Services. They're touchstones, and these 6 areas are community, economic security, education, engagement, family, and physical and emotional health. Given that we want to ensure our funding decisions support our strategic priorities, I will highlight this for you tonight to show you how each of the OTRs help our department achieve that AYR objective. Our mission, the Tompkins County Youth Service Department invests time, resources, and funding into communities to enable all youth to thrive in school, work, and life. I wanted to focus just a little bit on that word thrive. Definition is to grow, develop, succeed. It is to prosper, to flourish, to be your best self. This is what our department is all about, making sure that the youth have access to the resources and supports they need to grow into their best selves. We do this through using local and state dollars to help plan and coordinate youth services, to fund agencies that work directly with youth, and through our work in the rural areas via the Municipal Youth Service System and the REC Partnership. We approach our charge of our mission through a continuum of care framework. Our COC framework is a spectrum of youth services that are organized and delivered in a coordinated manner to meet the varying needs of young people as they develop through the different stages of development. It's important to remember that the dollars invested in the COC framework are preventative in nature. By investing in these targeted interventions now, the county will see a reduction in the cost they would otherwise incur as these youth grow into adults, oftentimes accessing more social services later on.
I highlight this pyramid for you tonight because all the OTRs that we're going to talk about deal directly with the first 3 levels of the prevention services outlined in the pyramid. We've used this pyramid for all our past presentations, and just as a reminder, as you go up the pyramid, the amount of youth that are served goes down and the cost per youth does increase. As you can see, we've been, in this next slide, we've been operating with 4 FTEs for the last several years. I will say in the last month, we did actually hire our 4th staff for probably the last 15 to 18 months. We've been doing the work of what used to be 8 to 10 people with 3, so we've been pretty busy. But the 5% reduction in budget did not actually impact our FTEs. The 5% reduction meant we had to cut $67,958 from our budget. For a larger department, this may seem like a small amount, but for us, that means we have to choose between a full-time employee or eliminating a funded program. Our department has always operated on a very tight budget. This is especially important to note this year because over the last several years, the budget guidance from the legislature has been to make cuts after cuts to our budget. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, our department has reorganized duties and created a much more efficient and effective operations plan. However, we are now at the place that the cuts we are being asked to make this year will have a dramatic impact on our ability to do the work of our mission. To meet the 5% reduction ratio, we did the following. We cut $19,821 from our operating budget lines and cut $48,137 from our agency funding. We used data to minimize the impact these cuts would have on the number of youth that would be served. It's also important to note that in the next 18 months, we have an impending retirement of a staff member who's been with us for nearly 4 decades. The need to capture that knowledge and sustain the work of our department also weighed heavy in our decision. So we'll get into the OTRs. The first OTR is that we are asking you to restore the $19,821 that we cut from our operation budget to meet the 5% reduction. This OTR is correlated with AYR Touchstone's community and education. This very important funding pays for our office supplies and printing, which is necessary for our ability to disseminate important information for youth programs and services to the community. It funds our professional development, which allows staff to attend applicable and essential trainings, summits, and conferences. It funds our it covers local mileage as our youth do serve as county liaisons to every municipality for their youth commissions that happen monthly. However, most importantly, this funds our professional services. This is to fund our continued support and collaboration with entities in our work around Safe Harbor or the commercial sexual exploitation of children, or better known as CSEC. Together, we work to educate our communities on this important topic, provide trainings that both raise public awareness and help to prevent these heinous crimes altogether. These funds also give us the ability to request the needed trainings for youth, organizations, school personnel, and communities. A good example of this would be us being a contributor and a partner for the Clyde survey. The survey collects feedback from school-age youth, asking them about themselves, their families, their schools, their community. It collects self-reported data on youth substance use and risky behavior, and is shared and used in schools, organizations, and communities. Our second OTR is we are seeking an additional that's a lot of money, $47,225 in target funding. These dollars will allow us to sustain the work that the Rural Youth Service Program does in the rural communities by retaining their qualified staff and helping offset the increased operational costs associated with providing these programs to our most susceptible and marginalized youth. These funds will be matched dollar for dollar by our municipal partners, meaning that we will be able to leverage a total of $94,450 into rural youth programming this year. This OTR is associated with all 6 of the of the 6 touchstones that I mentioned. The reach of the Rural Youth Service Program has been felt very consistently in every corner of our county for the last 29 years. And in many cases, the youth development programming that they provide is the only programming available to those youth in those areas of the county. This work is even made more important as we have seen more and more of our marginalized youth and their families driven out of Ithaca proper due to lack of affordable and accessible housing. If these funds are not approved, then hard decisions will need to be made by our municipal partners. They will be forced They will be forced to look at cutting program educator hours as well as the number of programming hours that are offered. For many youth, these programs are the only source of socialization, positive interaction, and connection with a supported and consistent adult, and making sure they have a place where they feel like they belong and matter. Our third OTR. In this OTR, we are asking that you reinstate $30,000 of the funding that we cut from our agencies to meet the 5% reduction. This funding will allow us to continue our fiscal support of CCE's urban outreach program in 2025 and beyond. This OTR is correlated with the 4 touchstones: community, education, engagement, and family. Historically, the urban outreach program has primarily served youth who live in West Village and the North Side apartment complex, with the majority of the youth and families having English as their second language. After getting through the worst of COVID-19, the program has unfortunately experienced several overwhelming setbacks. Longtime key staff is retired, the North Side complex was torn down for reconstruction, and many families they served needed to move outside of the city. This program has struggled over the last 2 years to find its footing with no staff and location. However, I am pleased to report that our friends and leadership of CCE have worked hard to hire new staff to get this program back on track. They now have a new program leader who is currently partnering with Bell Sherman Elementary School. The focus population consists in part of children of immigrant parents, as well as children whose caregivers cannot afford the existing fee-for-service after-school program. We believe this program is important and critical in researching the specific population. We wish to continue our funding support of urban outreach and their efforts to grow, rebuild, and strengthen the program. We are confident that without our continued funding, the program will cease to exist, causing a loss of jobs and needed services. I will move on to the rec partnership version, if that is okay with you guys, and then take questions at the end. The rec partnership was established in its current form in 1995 and will actually celebrate 30 years of partnership in 2025. So what is the rec partnership? It is a municipal, an intermunicipal partnership that allows youth to participate in recreational programs, to meet new friends, to learn new skills, and have positive new experiences in well-supervised, appropriate activities at an affordable price and at convenient times and locations. It allows municipalities that have limited or no recreation services to provide a diverse offering of programs for their own youth at a fraction of what they would pay otherwise. One huge highlight that I wanted to share with you all tonight is that in the summer of 2023, the rec partnership saw over 7,000 total youth participants within their programming. This was up 2,000 youth participants from the summer prior. We've talked a little bit about their mission, so I won't read that to you. Getting to the rec partnership budget, the actual budget amount is determined by the rec partnership board. This board consists of appointed individuals from each of the participating municipalities. The city of Ithaca, the town of Ithaca, and Tompkins County all pay 25% of the total budget respectively, and as such are given 2 votes on the RP board as opposed to 1 vote for the smaller municipalities. The total rec partnership budget is then divided into 4 equal parts representing quarters of the whole. The last quarter of the budget is divided among smaller municipalities using a weighted formula. The formula uses the assessed property value of each municipality's taxable properties in the Ithaca City School District. It also takes into account a 3-year average of each municipality's participants within the different programs. Basically, what this means is that the smaller municipalities pay based on their usage of the different programs. Gets to our OTR. This OTR has been recommended in the county administrator's budget. Thank you, Lisa. This OTR is associated with the following touchstones: community, engagement, and physical and emotional health. The rec partnership board voted to support a 2025 budget that would increase the share that Tompkins County pays by $7,614. This will increase the total share paid by Tompkins County, also the city of Ithaca and the town of Ithaca, from $94,595 in 2024 to $102,208 in 2025 The city of Ithaca and the town of Ithaca will see the same increase in their shares of their total budget, and they have also indicated that they will pay their amount in their 2025 budget, with the smaller shares being divided using the formula that we just talked about. So that is what I have for you tonight. Any questions?
Thank you for being crisp.
Try.
Questions? Randy Brown.
Yeah, on the rural youth services, what percent that's a separate program? Is that under program expense? So I'm trying to see where that is. I know your biggest
The biggest OTR?
the biggest expense area is program expense at $1,077,000. So is that like open doors, all those programs going through that?
Yeah.
But that's not, would that be rural youth services as well going through that line item? I'm trying to, where does that go? Anyways, so what percentage does the county pay of the rural youth services programs?
So
Each town pays?
Yeah, it depends on which municipality you're talking about. Basically, when this program was created, the county gave money to municipalities and said, we'd like you to, if you could use these, you have to match it dollar for dollar. You also have to have the youth commission, which is responsible for needs assessments and making sure that the programming meets the needs of the youth in your community. So at least 50%, but honestly, most of the municipalities over the years have, their share now is much greater in most cases than the county, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Another question. On the OTR number 3 on urban outreach, you mentioned that that program languished for a while, and you've hired somebody recently for that?
Yes, Cornell Cooperative Extension has hired a program lead or manager to help with that program, so.
So that's a contract that runs through them?
Yes.
You contracted them on that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Veronica?
Also on the urban youth outreach program, or whatever it was called, you mentioned Northside Apartments as one of the apartment complexes that the kids are mostly coming from, which got torn down, but it's now getting rebuilt, and I think about a third of the apartments are moved into at this point. How do you project that that construction finishing impact participation in the program, if at all?
So I think that it will benefit the program. I think that if we can get most of the, so the program itself was really the person who was doing it. It was really associated with that person. So with that longtime staff member retiring, it sort of changed the dimensions and the direction of the program. So one of our recommendations moving forward, if we continue to be able to fund it, would be to go back to that, the Northside Apartments and connect with those families and make sure that we're advocating to have those programs again. It probably would look a little bit different, but I think it would be, we anticipate it to be a benefit.
Others? Not seeing more hands. You made a nice presentation.
All
Thank
right.
you for coming tonight.
Sure, thank you.
Guys.
Absolutely. Guys, have a good night.
We ended up just 30 minutes over what we planned, which isn't terrific, but it's not horrible. Next time, we have 9 presentations. So we're going to need to be crisp, especially with our questions. I think you folks ask a lot of insightful and questions tonight. We haven't drifted. Rich?
Yeah, I know we all want to go home, but
Thank you.
yeah, we do. And I want to as much as anybody, but I guess I have a question about the process we're going through. It seems like we're heading towards situations where we don't have room to maneuver to make the smart decision on request after request. And it seems like to me that perhaps this is a problem of our own making, in that we made 2 decisions at the same time. One, to set a fund balance of 25% and to set up reserves at the same time, essentially. What I would like to know is, what would our percentage look like if we pretended, and I hate to use the word pretend, but pretend we didn't set up the reserves. That money would still be in our fund balance, yet we would have expense in our budget that we're covering with reserves. If you back them both out, what would our fund balance percentage look like? Is it possible to calculate that? I'm afraid we've come to a situation where the tool should be working for us, and our policy as a tool is actually preventing us from being able to do the best job on our budget. And I would propose we look at this, at least so we get some idea where we would be otherwise. It seems like there's some real benefit to the exercise we're going through, but if our answer is we just sit here and we listen to people give us terrible stories about what's going to happen to their departments, and there's nothing we can do about it because of our policy, it's not doing its job. Lisa?
So we could provide you with those numbers backed out. At the same time, the policy in and of itself is providing the guidance to inform the budget or to force a reprioritization. And I'm afraid if we were to backtrack on the policy and sales tax does not improve and our fund balance
Lots of reasons. I'd like to see what the numbers are and what
Sure.
that percentage is.
Yeah,
We're
I'm just
able
saying
to do
if
that?
we,
Yeah.
yes, I
Okay.
can. I just want to finish by saying I fear that we would be in the same position a year from now.
I don't understand your question. What are you trying to back out of?
If we take the reserve amounts and put them back into fund balance and then indicate the money we were going to spend is back in the budget, that we're going to use our total fund balance without the reserves separated to pay what we need to pay. What we've done is we've taken a big amount and put it into reserves so it's no longer unassigned fund balance, and we've calculated our available spending on that. And if we hadn't set up the reserves, we wouldn't have this fund balance percentage issue. We'd have enough that we could apply to at least to some of these requests, I think, but I'd like to see what that percentage might be.
I don't think it's that simple, because I think once you set up a reserve, it's a reserve.
I'm not saying it's,
one at a time.
I'm not saying it's simple, but.
I've got Randy next.
Yeah.
Yeah, I voted for the 25% fund balance, and I would change that vote today. But but I agree with Rich. We need to understand, and maybe it's not now, maybe it's later on after we do all these presentations, and it's going to come down to, are we going to use any of that money, right? It's going to be our choice. I assume we're going to have that discussion. I hope we do. But I'm fairly confident that, and here's an example, all right, so I'm going to give you an example. Youth Services, just hired an employee. A nice young man, by the way, named Donovan. But it was in their budget for 7, 8 months that they didn't pay that bill. So that revenue was still there and the expense was not there. So now that money is for 7 or 8 months is going to roll over. And there's many, many employees that's happened with. So we're going to refund our fund balance again with our rollover, which we don't roll over anymore, but that's what I'm calling it. Yep. And it's going to be someplace around $6 million that we're going to roll over at the end of this year. We're going to have $6 million more in revenue than we budgeted for expense. So that money's going to roll over. And so that's my issue with accounting, government accounting, right? So that's just the way it is. So I think we need that discussion. I think we can do this without affecting our fund balance policy if we just pay attention to the money we already have. So.
I'm going to get you, Deb, but I just want to say, when you say rollover, you don't mean our rollover policy. You're talking about the money going back to fund balance. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay, just so I understand.
The rollback.
All right, I want to go to Lori next.
Thank you. I just got a couple things to say, I guess. First is we can absolutely come up with that number. However, I would caution you in that historically, from what I can glean from Rick's spreadsheets, that money may have been sitting in your fund balance, but he had it reserved in his spreadsheet. So he was kind of already operating in that manner. However, it's not transparent. It's not transparent to you. It's not transparent to me coming in new. It's not transparent to anybody. So by establishing the reserves, you're making it very transparent of what the plan is. The policy specifically talks about the target and what to do if you don't meet the target. So maybe we're under or maybe we're over. Hopefully Randy's right, we're over, fund balance gets replenished, and then at that point we look at it and say, okay, what are we gonna do with it now? Are we gonna put it back in reserve, some more to reserves? Are we gonna use it to offset budget? What are we gonna do? But right now, we're not at that spot. But in 2024, we very well may be. And then we'll have a plan. We'll have a plan. How are we gonna use that excess fund balance? And I will say, and this is my opinion, that it is not sustainable to continue to use fund balance to pass your budget for operations. And I know everybody likes to have this perception of one-time requests, but my observation is it's not always one-time requests. They're multiple year requests, they turn into target, and you're using your fund balance for those ongoing expenses. And I think you need to be very, very careful with that.
I've got Deborah, Shauna, Amanda.
Yeah, so a couple of
And Greg.
things. Thank you for that, Lori. You know, and I think one of the problems that we've encountered is that because it wasn't transparent what that money should have been set aside for, we thought we had more fund balance than we had. So we spent it, spent it, spent it, spent it. I don't think you back out of your policies because all of a sudden you hit a year where reality hits you in the face and all of a sudden it's hard. I think one thing, to Randy's point, is if we had some way to calculate what our actual fund balance is now, not by taking stuff out of reserves, but I mean, is there some software somewhere that we could get? I mean, it would be a great investment that would actually track.
Well, AI.
Where, yeah, there you go.
Calculator.
$9.99 Staples.
Because what, you know, calculating this budget based on what we had December 31st of last year is, I agree with Randy, which hardly ever happens, that it's just not, and he's not here to hear it. Y'all are going to have to tell him. It's just ridiculous that we're like 8 months behind knowing how much money we have to spend. And I suspect we probably have a fair amount more than what we think we have. But there's no way to know unless we have some way to actually calculate it.
Shauna?
I think part of the issue is that, at least for the past 6 years that I've been in the legislature, 90% of the requests that walk through the door asking the county for money, we've gone with. And what happens is that we have a spreadsheet that's 4 pages long of OTRs that we have actually added to target. And it's well over $4 million a year, which, you know, I get it, 20,000 here, 20,000 there, but it adds up. And so I think what we really have to do is look at that spreadsheet, look at the programs that we've sponsored. Some of them aren't working. Let's be very honest about what's working and not working. Yep. Some of the things that we're paying, you know, might just be $20,000 or $10,000. I haven't heard that name mentioned for that nonprofit in probably 4 years, which means that they're probably not doing what we initially were sold on. So we're going to have to ask ourselves those hard questions. As far as changing the policy, you know, the way that I saw the policy was that we're putting money in one account to allocate those funds so that we don't see it as money that we can spend. It also says this is our intention. We're going to build a new jail. We're going to build a new center of government. The one thing that we have coming up that we're not allocating for is the shelter. And it could be anywhere from 1 million. We hope it's only 1 million. But we might not get any ESHI funding. We just don't know. We know that we're in a precarious situation in a month, that we don't know how much we're going to get funded for that. And so the fact that we have 22% in our fund balance right now, I mean, that doesn't even pay for 3 months of this county's expenses. And you know, I know that people are uncomfortable with keeping tax revenue and you know, hoarding funds. I've heard that term, but I mean, we have to be really mindful of the fact that we have a lot of balls in the air, and we also have a lot of great things that we're trying to do. But this budget period, you know, I think what's going to happen is we're going to have to take away some things that we've never had to do before, never. We're going to have to look at programs, we're going to have to cut things, we're going to have to say no, and that feels really crappy for most of us.
Why we get paid the big bucks?
All right, let me just say, we seem to be getting into a fund balance discussion. And I'm going to go to Dan. Dan, you talked about whether we ought to have this in a separate meeting. What's your opinion about where we should go? I've got 4 more people on the list right now.
I'm going to throw it back to the group. What's your opinion? Should we set aside a special meeting for this?
Yep.
We just finished the 4 people on the list.
Sorry, I said
so you don't give preference to the
People had their
people
hands
that already
up,
spoke.
so.
Right.
I'm not asking to cut anybody off. I'm just saying.
I've got Amanda, Greg, Rich, Veronica.
I appreciate what Shauna and Lori and Deborah said. I think if we want to revisit the policy, let's do that starting January 1st. And let's get through the budget based on what we already passed, and then let's spend the next 6 months revisiting. How did it work? Was it terrible? Like, let's go back to it. But we've already done that. And litigating that again right now doesn't really feel like the time to me. I think we have what we have, and I personally don't want to go through the policy again. In terms of, just to sort of reiterate, like, I personally feel like if there's something that you as a legislator want to add to the budget, you should, if it's $50,000, you should come with somewhere else where you're going to take $50,000 out. And, or if you want to take $50,000 out and then you're like, hey, I want to put it towards this, I feel like that's the most transparent way to go through this, and not just some general idea of like, I want to add in a bunch of stuff so we need more fund balance. We may need another meeting to talk about the fund balance, but personally I feel like we have what we have, and it doesn't make sense that it's based on previous information, but that's how we've always done it. So suddenly people want to spend more money, and so we want to revisit that. I just don't think right this moment is the time.
Greg.
I think, gosh, there's pieces of everyone who spoke that I agree with. I don't think now is the time to revisit the percentages of the policy. I don't think it's productive to reiterate, if I voted one way or the other. What I do want to try to figure out, though, is nobody's asking to spend $45 million or $40 million or $30 million, right? It may be $1 million, maybe $2 million, right? And I know that sounds like a lot of money, because it is. But in the scale of things, it's not that significant. And so if we can not cut an effective program, or if we can fund something that is beneficial, and we can do something by taking out of the fund balance, which there's likelihood, and unfortunately we don't know, so we're going to have to roll the dice, but we've seemed to every year been able to add a little bit more fund balance. I just don't like this idea that the money's locked in this vault that's never able to be touched, and no one's defining what a rainy day actually is. Because all I've heard for the last 3 months is how awful this budget process is going to be. So, like, is it not rainy enough yet? Like, at what point when we come out of this process drenched in despair, are we going to be able to look at the funds we have available to help those that contributed to accumulating those funds? So I'm not in favor of relooking at the policy, but I am in favor of saying, is there, taking $1 million or $2 or whatever the case may be, 500,000, 300,000, whatever we decide from our reserve, is it going to cripple our rating, right? To take the allocated fund balance that we have and say we're going to apply these allocated funds to these allocated purposes to reduce our operating expense, and then we'll refill those over time based on our policy. Is that going to, put us out on the street as a county? No. But it's like this third rail that nobody wants to talk about. It's like you either want to spend the fund balance down to zero, is the perception of people, or you don't want to touch it at all. But I feel like there's a happy medium. I feel like there's a compromise that we can come to where we're all reasonable. I don't personally plan to add any OTRs this year that add things. I may support the reduction of things. I don't want to fully commit to that because I haven't seen everything yet in its totality, but that seems to be my inclination. This is not a year for entirely new things. So that's the first piece. The second piece is this idea of the strategic plan being utilized in a way that if this, then we aren't achieving the strategic plan. But if we do this, are we just maybe taking a slower step or a shorter step, right, towards the implementation of the strategic plan? I think that's really important to decipher, and I would encourage department heads to really understand, is it a complete failure of the strategic plan priority if we don't fund something in its totality? Or are we just taking a slower walk towards completion? Because I don't want to see the strategic plan weaponized in a way, and I know that was the concern by many, but we need to do our best. We need to use this as our guiding doctrine, but not as, you know, handcuffing us to force spending where maybe it's not the right year to spend or to advance that priority further. So those are my two pieces.
Rich?
Yeah, I'm all for stingy, and I think it's a really healthy thing for us to be looking very hard at our budget, so I was not suggesting that at all. But I hear the finance department needs $21,000 for software that would actually save the money, and we can't do it. And soil and water needs $200,000 so that they can do their essential function. And it's not even spent money, it's borrowed money. And there's no way to do that. We've put ourselves in a corner. So I don't care if it's amending the policy or it's, as Greg said, recognizing that you need to do things to make the smart decisions. And if it means taking some money out of our fund balance and waiting for the end of the year where that fund balance number will be where we need it to be. I have confidence that there's money coming into our fund balance as it does every year from sources we didn't realize. The idea that we use a number from 2023 and just say, well, we learned about this in August and it's going to cripple us, and so we don't do anything about it. We just make poor decisions in our budget. I can't accept that. Sorry.
Veronica.
I definitely think it's worth having a separate meeting about the fund balance and maybe these like higher whole budget level concepts. The thing I raised my hand for, but then I have another question after that, was just to tag on to Deborah's comment about like, can we track what our fund balance is over time? And I think Lori can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the missing pieces is not the finance department or administration lacking software or whatever that would do it, but they're lacking the real-time information from the many, many spenders within our organization, which is a point for another time. My question, I guess, something I would find helpful to think about this is if I could see the budget item breakdown like that's in the budget book, but with more previous years of the actual adopted budget and the actual expenditure at the end of the year. Each budget, I can see the previous years, and then if I click into that, I can see the previous years and so on, but it would be cool to have a bit of a longer tail. If that's easy, I don't know if it is.
We transferred budget software, so I'm not sure that that's an easy.
Yeah,
All right, let's go to Travis.
If we get to, at the end of the year, if we realize that the fund balance is more than what we expected or taxes did better than what we expected, some of the things that didn't get funded during this budget process can then get funded at that time, correct? Right?
Through November 10th or 14th or something like that. That's the cutoff.
No, I think you're asking, could it be taken out of contingency, for example?
Yeah.
If this, I would think if this legislature wanted to do that, it could. But then you're basically amending your budget otherwise. And, you know, you do it for this one and not for that one. This is what we're trying to do for the full year.
I'm just saying, this idea that this is impossible to fund these things, that's not correct, right? If the $21,000 to $200,000, it's not impossible that we don't fund those now. If we vote not to fund it, it is possible to fund those later. Yes or no?
Am I correct that we could have budget amendments if necessary?
After the year, well, we won't know
Yeah, we
that.
won't know the fund balance until next summer.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Dan Klein.
So I went back and looked at the fund balance policies. This is my understanding. I don't think we are limited in spending it. If we go below the 25%, we are required to have a plan to restore it within 2 years, depending upon the percentage, but probably 2 years. So by my reading, we could, as part of this process, say, okay, we're spending another $1 million. And then by our policy, we do have to come up with a plan. The plan could be we wait till next year's audit comes in, and that could be a plan, or it could be some other plan. Anyway, if someone has a different interpretation of how the policy operates, I think it would be worthwhile for everyone to hear it.
I just want to remind everyone that I have approved $3 million in one-time over targets in the recommended budget. So it's not that all one-time over targets or one-time needs and expenditures have not been funded. They are included. So we're talking about an additional $1 million or $2 million on top of that, which puts us back in the cycle of utilizing one-time funds for the operating budget needs.
Those came from the debt reserve, right?
Essentially, yes, money displaced by using the debt reserves.
And I would just like to say, take a turn, is that I don't agree with you, Rich. I don't think we've hamstrung ourselves. I think we made a very important policy decision last summer, whenever it was we adopted the reserves. And I think that living with that decision is not a bad thing. Having a conservative look at revenues and expenditures is the kind of thing that municipal governments ought to be doing. We always know there's more places to spend money than we want. And as far as this being a rainy day, I don't agree with that at all. We got things out there that could hit us, like the pandemic. We've got things like ice storms or maybe climate flooding or something like
Recession.
that. We could be really hit by. That's what I would call don't mean a pun, but that's a rainy day. That's my opinion. Dan?
Pass.
Anyone else? Amanda?
Do we want to set up this extra meeting? And how would we do that?
What would the goal be?
What?
What would the goal be?
I don't know.
People,
Yeah, people. Exactly. People want to talk about it, so.
I think you wait till all the presentations are done, and then you decide then.
I agreed with you and you missed it.
Oh, yeah, well, you were in the bathroom.
She's agreeing with you again.
Lisa?
I'll say I hate to say it, but we do have another date that was set aside on the September 26th, if necessary, if we weren't able to fit in all of the departments. We don't have anything scheduled for that date. And I, again, didn't want to say it, but that
We
is.
could have a WWF legislative session to discuss the fund balance.
Fund balance, Royal Rumble.
And
On Randy's team.
Katrina just said 26 is after all the presentations, so.
Yeah, which is consistent with what Randy suggested. I mean, maybe as we move along, and as legislators submit amendments that might eliminate programs and OTRs and we'll have a better sense of where we are. I think that's your point. I think this is the second time I've agreed with you.
Let's wrap up.
It's a red letter day.
Big note.
One preliminary thing I didn't say at the very beginning, I should have, was that doing EBC, we do not have privilege of the floor for the public. Their chance to comment will come at the budget forum and eventually at the public hearing on the budget. All right, I guess we're done.
One down.